Having received power from the spirit of light, Milaneo lit the sun, and the spellcaster Freed summoned the spirit of darkness and created night. And if the former gave life force, illuminating the world with warm light, then Freed gave peace, throwing a shadow on the world in which to hide from light and heat, and so the world of the Empire of Ubera was created by their hands. Today's imperial family of Milaneo and Archdukes Fried are the only ones capable of controlling the spirits in this empire. Princess Dorothea Milaneo of Ubera is interested in history. She reads books, but is quite skeptical about what is written in them. Dorothy is distracted from her constant occupation by the princess's older brother, Raymond Milaneo, who runs into the library. The boy apologizes to his sister for distracting her and offers to play together. Dorothea looks at her brother and remembers how this true heir to the throne once died at her hands in a past life, when she was a cruel tyrant. Now, Dorothy is experiencing her second life, given to her as a chance to make things right, and she does not want a repeat of the past. This time, it should be the other way around, and her goal should be a life in which she will be kind, because her main lesson was that good deeds are rewarded with happiness, and bad deeds are paid for with misfortune. At that time, Dorothea was the true evil, having killed the crown prince and seized the imperial throne. She destroyed all the undesirables and gave wealth and power to those who were pleasing. However, when the heroine got everything, only the end awaited her, because the one she loved hated her and chose death, and the people with whom she shared the power strangled her with her. Then Dorothea gladly accepted death, but suddenly fate decided to give her a second chance, and the girl was born again. Having decided for herself that from now on she lives differently, the princess realizes that now she needs to endure her brother, no matter what he does. Ray affectionately hugs his sister. He is proud of how smart and well-read she is. There are only flowers and butterflies in the boy's head, but he got more than Dorothy only because he was born a prince. Raymond does not stop asking Dorothy to play with him, and then the nurse comes to the girl's aid, who advises the boy not to distract his sister from studying. The nurse notices that Dorothea is studying the history of Ubera. She is impressed by her knowledge. The princess talks about what she knows about a spirit stone that disappeared during the time of Korra's. The maid never ceases to be amazed at the depth of the little princess's knowledge and wants the emperor to know about it. Dorothea's heart skips a beat. She asks the nurse not to talk about her with the emperor. The emperor is Dorothy's own father, but the word is foreign to her because she does not feel it. Of course, they are related by blood, but for Dorothy it does not matter at all since she could not inherit the right of Milaneo. Dorothea's mother, Empress Alice, died immediately after the birth of the girl, and therefore Karnan was indifferent to the child born at the expense of the life of his beloved wife. Previously, the girl did everything so that her father noticed her. She fell in front of him, demonstrated her intelligence. She tried her best to surpass Ray, but her father did not look in her direction until the very end. However, it was different with Raymond. He didn't have to do anything to receive gifts from his father and dine together. He could ask the emperor endless questions and smile, and the girl did not understand why he loved Ray more. Dorothy could not accept that her father had never looked in her direction, although she tried much harder. Therefore, Dorothy could only calm down when she tortured Ray properly and took away his belongings. As punishment, the emperor locked the girl in a room for a month, and the further they went, the more their relationship resembled a diabolical, vicious circle. Dorothy longed for love, but her love remained one-sided and did not reach him, as if she wanted to reach the moon with her hands. In this way, the seeds of evil were imbued with anger and guilt and sprouted, bringing with them even greater suffering. Her jealousy and greed, her ability to go over heads, all this gave birth to the tyrant Dorothea Milaneo. However, now, in this life, the girl realizes that it is useless to shift her own sins onto others, and in this life, she will definitely be kind. The nurse persuades the girl to leave the library and take a walk in the garden. She suggests that she go to the garden of Alice's homeland, which the emperor created for his wife, who missed her homeland. Before her rebirth, the girl often went there, but now she has not visited it for a long time, so she obediently goes to the gate. Suddenly, she hears the voice of the emperor, who is outraged that some people are heading into the garden. Karnan had not seen his daughter for so long that he did not recognize the girl as a princess. The nurse is in a hurry to introduce the girl to her father. The emperor is dissatisfied with Dorothy's manners, and she is upset that he cannot even greet her properly. The woman justifies the girl by saying that she is surprised to meet the emperor because in fact she shines in etiquette classes. Dorothea, lifting the hem of her dress, curtsies to greet the emperor as befits him. Emperor Karnan wonders what the princess's exclusivity is, but she modestly denies her exceptionality. Learning from the wet nurse that Dorothea knows the entire imperial bloodline, Karnan demands that she tell everything she knows. The girl refuses, and the father and daughter begin a verbal skirmish, and each of them believes that one is testing the other's knowledge. The emperor continues to insist that she tell him everything she knows. Dorothea is stubborn, saying that she is only saving the time of the busy emperor who has been so busy that he has never visited her. Suddenly, Karnan changes the subject, ordering the girl to ask her for what she desires. Knowing that she cannot remain silent, although she does not need anything from him in this life, Dorothy asks her father to make the best wine and name it after her. The emperor reprimands the wet nurse for the fact that a girl of this age talks about alcohol. Dorothea stands up for the servant, saying that she read about this in a book about Babelois. The author of the book told how the hero drank wine with his beloved, and Dorothea became interested out of curiosity to taste good wine at least once. Karnan was surprised at the young girl's erudition and promised her to fulfill her request if she told her genealogy, otherwise he would sentence the servant girl who lied to him to death. Despite the fact that, obviously, Dorothea inherited her tyrannical character from her father, this time she obeys because she decided to become kind, and the fate of the nurse now depends on her action. After this incident, the nurse expected that the emperor would be interested in his daughter, but he has not visited her until now. The maid explains Karnan's behavior by being busy, but Dorothea is glad that she does not see him because it spoils her mood. Suddenly, Ray appears, and after asking the maid not to betray her, Dorothy runs as fast as she can to hide from her annoying brother. Standing behind a pillar, the girl listens to her brother boast about his ability to control the Spirit of Light. The Spirit of Light is a power that once lit the sun and is available only to the Milaneo family, but now it has weakened and can only light small lights. Over time, those who cannot control spirits at all began to be born in the family, and the princess is one of them. Raymond is upset that he did not find his sister, as a friend came to him and he wanted to introduce him to Dorothy. The princess decides to run out of the back gate of the garden unnoticed and runs, not noticing that someone is standing on the threshold. The girl crashes into a dark-haired boy with a red tie and falls to the ground in surprise. The boy is alarmed that the girl has fallen. He apologizes, and Dorothea, hearing his voice, cannot believe her eyes. In front of her stands him, the man whom she loved more than anyone else in the world before her rebirth, a man who was then ruined by her greed and who hated her more than life. Brushing off the flood of memories, Dorothy looks back at the boy, who continues to apologize and tries to help her up. Without noticing it, the princess, who did not stop thinking about him for a moment, pronounces the boy's name, Theon. The boy wonders how she knows his name, since he sees her for the first time. However, this thought fades into the background when he notices that she is crying and tries to calm her down. Seeing his sister crying and the boy sitting next to him, an alarmed Raymond rushes to the rescue as fast as he can. The prince grabs Theon by the collar and shakes him with all his might, as he believes that he has offended his sister. Dorothea separates the boys, claiming that she cried because something got in her eyes. Theon is surprised and impressed that the girl turned out to be the princess who so bravely covers him in front of her brother. Raymond apologizes to the boy for misinterpreting the situation. The boys reconcile, and Ray introduces the sister of her new friend Theon, Frida. He bows to the princess and kisses her hand as a sign of respect, once again apologizing for the incident. Dorothy looks at Theon and thinks of a new beginning for their relationship, hoping that in this life he will turn his attention to her. However, she is distracted from pleasant thoughts by a familiar voice that calls for Theon. Turning around, Dorothea sees Julia Delavan, Theon's first and last love in a past life. Due to the agreement between the families and Dorothea's stubbornness, Theon had no choice but to marry her, but he loved Julia until his death. And such was Dorothea's past life. She longed for her father's love, but could not get it, and longed for Theon's love, but he did not give it to her either. Even after his marriage, Theon constantly corresponded with Julia behind Dorothea's back. The heroine prayed that Julia would disappear, die, and not be able to be with him. She rejoiced when a faithful servant with a solid track record brought Dorothea the news of the death of her husband's lover. The girl entertained the illusion that now her lover would come to her, but he broke away from her embrace, preferring death. And now they were standing here with her brother, chatting merrily about something. Dorothea remarks that Theon and Julia must be together in this life because they are standing holding hands. Afraid that all her thoughts are visible on her face, the princess turns around and runs away. Her brother tries to stop Dorothy, but she tearfully runs away from the people whose deaths she caused in a past life. Running to her room, the princess immediately goes to bed and asks the nurse to let her rest. The next morning, Dorothea sits in her room and reads a book with interest, as usual. However, she is unable to concentrate as Raymond nervously walks back and forth around the room. Unable to stand it, the princess slams the book shut and demands that her brother calm down and stop flickering around. Ray shares with his sister his worries about the fact that this evening he will officially receive the title of Crown Prince. The boy realizes the importance of the event and worries because he believes that he is not worthy of this title. Raymond believes that his sister would be a much better candidate because she is much smarter and more talented than him. Dorothea denies this assumption since she does not know how to summon spirits. Raymond is sure that soon his sister will definitely learn this since she is very smart. The prince asks Dorothy to wish him good luck, as it is very important to him but does not receive support from her. The crown transfer ceremony is one of the main events of the empire when the next successor of the emperor is named. Dorothea sits before the ceremony and looks at the decoration of the palace, which now seems very modest to her. And then the emperor appears, and the princess realizes that she has stopped experiencing any emotions. She looks at the scepter from which the spirit stone disappeared, and remembers that before she was executed, a shard of it was found somewhere. Now all this has nothing to do with Dorothea, and her attention turns to the prince who has entered the hall. Raymond slowly approaches his father, his face worried, and Dorothy is afraid that he will forget his speech. The girl is dissatisfied with her brother's performance and the way he controls the spirits. If she were in his place, she would not have made such a mistake. The ceremony comes to an end, and the emperor escorts the crown prince to the guests gathered in celebration, while Dorothea silently follows them. Ladies who notice the girl admiring the beauty of the princess note her resemblance to her late mother. Hearing this, the emperor was furious and ordered the guests not to talk nonsense. Dorothea is saddened by what she hears, but she cannot leave the place for reasons of propriety. Emperor Karnan and Ray are in the center of everything, and Dorothy is treated no better than a candlestick fixed in the wall. Before Rebirth, she would have stepped into the center and shown her importance, emphasizing what a fool Ray was against her background. However, now there is not a single such thought in her head. She only wants it all to end as soon as possible, but someone is heading towards her. Raising her head, Dorothea sees Theon standing in front of her with a glass of pomegranate juice in her hands. The princess is glad to see him and that he is without Julia. Theon offers her a drink of juice and holds out a glass. They walk around the hall, and Theon tells how Raymond boasted to him about his sister and her knowledge. The boy suggests that now they will be able to meet in Epistemia. Epistemia is the best academy in the empire, where only the most outstanding talents are trained. In addition, this is the main place where the descendants of noble families studying together acquire connections for the future. However, unlike Ray, who was able to easily get into this academy, Dorothy, so as not to overshadow the prince with her knowledge, could not get there. Once in a past life, she tried to resist this by throwing a stone in the direction of the Epistemia, but it broke a window and hit the eldest son of the Duke of Bronte on the head. After this incident, the Emperor locked Dorothy in the castle and thus put an end to their relationship. That is why now, in order not to repeat the past, the princess herself decided not to enter the academy. Learning of Dorothea's decision and looking at the prince, Theon understands everything and tactfully decides not to continue the conversation. In order not to look humiliated in the eyes of the boy, the princess decides to change the topic of conversation. However, the conversation about the weather is interrupted by Julia, who suddenly approaches. Theon is looking for the Archduke, and the boy apologizes to the princess that he needs to leave. Dorothea is upset that Theon had to leave so quickly, and she thinks about leaving the event for her own room. The girl approaches her father, who is standing with his back to her, to ask permission to leave. The Duke of Bronte, who is talking to the Emperor at this moment, turns sharply at the voice. Making an awkward movement with his elbow, he touches Dorothea's glass and the juice is poured onto her dress. The girl is upset because this glass was given to her by Theon. Now there is no juice and she stands all dirty in the middle of the crowd. The Duke hurries to apologize to the princess, but the Emperor insists that Dorothy apologize to him herself. Ray, who has noticed the incident, decides to intervene and declares his sister's innocence. However, Dorothea, who has decided to be pliable from now on, bows to the Duke and apologizes for her awkwardness. Bronte is embarrassed that the girl apologizes to him because it was his fault. The Emperor orders a servant to take the princess away to change her clothes, and Dorothy is only happy about this because this is a great reason to leave the event. As she leaves, the princess notices the gazes fixed on herself, and when she turns around, she sees the surprised eyes of Theon and Julia. Embarrassed that they have witnessed the princess lose her authority, Dorothy runs away from the banquet hall. The girl sits on her bed with her knees crossed, thinking that she can tolerate such an attitude from her father. But Theon's gaze was unbearable to her. From thoughts of Theon and the fact that he will never love her, Dorothea is distracted by a knock on the door. Prince Raymond has come to visit her as he is concerned about his sister's condition. Dorothy is angry at her brother and demands to leave her alone. She insists that he return to the event. Ray refuses to leave, as the reception in his honor does not bother him at all. He wants to be close to his sister. Hearing that the prince invites her to go out and play with him, Dorothy breaks down and jumps out of bed. She scolds Ray for being irresponsible because since he is the crown prince, he must behave appropriately and stop thinking only about games. She grabs her brother by the robe and pushes him away with all her might, asking him to leave her alone. Suddenly, Dorothy realizes that Theon and Julia have again witnessed this unsightly scene. As it turns out, Raymond brought them to play together, but Dorothy can think of nothing but her shame now. She slams the door in her brother's face so that he does not have time to say anything more. Closing the door behind her, the princess falls to her knees exhausted and cries. She hates herself and thinks that she looks pathetic and does not deserve love, but she understands that this is her path of redemption. For several days, Dorothea had been lying in bed, exhausted and with a fever. She is cared for by a wet nurse, and Raymond has not visited her all these days, apparently offended. Dorothy sits in the room reading a book, worried that she has been so rude to her brother. On the one hand, she is glad that he does not come because he is so annoying, and on the other hand, she promised herself that she will be kinder in the future. Suddenly, the door opens, and Ray appears on the threshold, holding a bundle that he brought as a gift to Dorothea. The boy tells his sister about his secret patch, which he secretly made behind the yard, and now he gives her his first grown tomatoes. The prince brags about his achievements and promises that the next vegetables will also be the first thing he will bring Dorothy to try. The princess is annoyed that the prince, who has been accepted into an episteme, is wasting his time in the gardens. The boy convinces her that he is engaged not only in the garden, but also in studying, and asks his sister for forgiveness for angering her. Worried and wringing her hands, Ray shares with Dorothy her worries about the fact that she never plays with him. Reminding herself that she will be kinder from now on, Dorothy calmly explains to her brother why behaving in this way will not make him a good emperor. He promises that he will try his best in epistemia and will be a good brother to her, and suggests that she go outside, as he is worried that she is always sitting in the castle. Raymond enthusiastically describes to his sister how wonderful it would be to go out into the city, but she refuses. After that, the prince constantly follows Dorothy wherever she goes and invites her for a walk. He does not give her a pass, leaving notes with requests to walk on the pages of her books. Unable to withstand such an onslaught, Dorothy agrees to go out, only on the condition that she will go alone, accompanied by a wet nurse. Inspired by the princess's decision, the nurse dressed her in a weekend dress, in which the girl did not feel very comfortable. However, the nurse had been waiting for this day for so long that she could not be stopped or persuaded. And so he and the princess walk together in a busy market square. The nurse suggests that Dorothy take her hand, as there are too many people around. The girl feels awkward because no one has ever held her hand in a past life, and so they find themselves on an observation deck from where they can see the whole city. Dorothea looked at the beautiful views and the merry people walking about the city, but in her eyes there was a different picture. In her memory, it was a war-weary city, and the streets were full of people who looked more like corpses, and even the wind was saturated with the smell of blood. And now she looks at the musicians in the square and thinks that this is what an empire looks like without a tyrant. The nurse suggests that she go to see the performance, and as they pass by the gateway, they do not notice that a man is watching them from there. Dorothea lies on the floor, blindfolded, and hears two male voices. The kidnappers, angry that the girl's clothes cost more than their dinner, plan to demand a ransom for her, although they have no idea who she is yet. During the walk, the nurse took the princess to all the shops, bought her a new hat. Noticing that the girl did not like to dress up, she decided to take her to the bookstore. After the book servant, she suggested that she go eat delicious desserts and walk across the alley to shorten the path. Suddenly, the man who was watching them crept up from behind, waved a truncheon over the nurse. Dorothy saw the woman, staggering from the blow, fall face down on the ground and rush to help. The attacker clamped the girl's mouth with a handkerchief soaked in some odorous liquid. And now, Dorothea lay bound, thinking how much she would not like to die at the hands of such scoundrels. As it turned out from the conversation of the kidnappers, 3 days ago they sent a wet nurse for money, but there is still no news from her. Surprised that she had been lying there for 3 days, Dorothy thought that the Emperor would probably give her up and not save her. The princess decides to take the situation into her own hands and shows signs of life so that the kidnappers pay attention to her. One of them approaches the girl and, taking off the blindfold, greets her good-naturedly. Dorothy decided to pretend to be a silly little girl and found out that the man's name was Tito. The girl bombards the kidnapper with stupid questions, such as whether he will be her wet nurse and who he is. Tito is fascinated and patiently answers her questions, introducing himself as a friend of her dad. Dorothy asks to be allowed to call the man Uncle Tito while thinking about how she will finish him off. Listening to compliments on her appearance, she remembers her past life. At that time, she knew one person who constantly told her such things and asked her to smile. Looking around, Dorothy asks the kidnapper where they are and learns that this is Tito's house. Then, noticing a scar above the man's eyebrow, she distracts the kidnapper by complimenting him and asking where the scar comes from. Sitting down next to the girl, Tito begins to tell incredible stories about how he fought 17 enemies alone. Looking around well, Dorothy asks Tito for food because she has not eaten for 3 whole days. The man consults with his friend, but he is against feeding the girl. Tito sits Dorothy down at the table, and only now does she fully feel how weak and hungry she is. The second kidnapper gets up from his seat and puts a knife to the throat of the princess and grabs her hand. And here again, Dorothea stands against the wall, her hands tied, and the criminal returns to his seat. Suddenly, he screams and jumps off the table abruptly, noticing some movement underneath it. Dorothy looks closely to see what scared him so much and notices a scorpion. The kidnappers stand aside, trembling in fright, and the girl offers them to catch the scorpion in exchange for bread and milk. Tito, with trembling hands, unties the girl so that she can help them. Taking up sticks for gambling, Dorothy catches the scorpion, not understanding how the two men could be frightened of it. The kidnappers ask the girl to carry the scorpion out of the house, and as Dorothy climbs the stairs, she realizes that the house is underground. All the way, she cannot understand why they let her go alone so easily, but when she leaves the house, everything becomes clear to her. Everywhere she looked, it was impossible to know where she could run, because there was an endless desert all around. Dorothy sits and chews the promised bread and milk. She is ambushed by a kidnapper who, as it turns out, is called Danny, and suddenly Tito bursts into the room. The girl hears criminals behind her back discussing the news that a princess has disappeared in the capital. Dorothea is annoyed that someone from the castle let slip about her loss, and now the kidnappers will not let her live, otherwise they will not survive themselves. Realizing that she will not wait for help from the Emperor, Dorothy decides to take the situation into her own hands and, when the kidnappers go out the door, creeps up to the closet. After finding Danny's bag, she pulls out a knife, deciding that it should be enough to defend herself. Hiding behind the door, Dorothy listens as Danny sends Tito to find the camels and takes it upon himself to kill the girl. Realizing that her fate is sealed, the princess realizes that she has no choice but to use this knife. Upon entering the room, Danny discovers that the girl is not at the table and tries to find her. Dorothy runs at the kidnapper from behind, holding a sharp knife tightly in her hands. Jumping as high as she can, she swings and lowers the knife point into Danny's shoulder. After striking the blow, Dorothea realizes that she is very weak, and the wound was not deep enough. The man turns around and furiously grabs the girl by the throat, lifting her off the floor. Danny pins Dorothy against the wall with just one hand, and she completely loses her balance and ability to defend herself. Pressing her with one hand, he knocks the knife out of her hand with the other, and it falls to the floor. "Dorothy has no strength," the kidnapper shouts at her, and gradually anger overwhelms the princess. She gains strength and pushes the man with her legs in the chest, pushing him away from her. Danny falls, and Dorothy, wasting no time in grabbing a fallen knife, stabs him in the leg. He asks for pity on her, and she remembers this look. The look of a man who looks at a monster. Remembering the promise she made to herself to be kind, Dorothea whispers to the kidnapper just to leave her alone. She turns around and goes to the exit along the already familiar route. Dorothy leaves the house and looks at the desert she will go to, with the only wish that everyone will leave her. The princess walks forward straight as far as her eyes can see, and the sun is already beginning to set. It is dark, and Dorothy is frightened by her powerlessness, for there is not a light in the desert, and she cannot even control the spirit of light. Tired, the girl lies right on the sand and seems ridiculous to herself, because even at such a moment she thinks that if Ray were in her place, he would have already been saved. When Dorothy opens her eyes, she realizes that she has been lying there unconscious for some time. She looks at the stars and suddenly notices a light moving in her direction in the distance. Hearing the clatter of hooves, she gathers her strength and rises from the ground, regretting that she did not die. However, the desire to live wins over the desire to die, and, getting back on her feet, Dorothy desperately waves and calls for help. The girl's strength does not last long, and she falls on her face, right on her face in the sand. Through the closing eyelids, she sees approaching people in knightly uniforms and hears the hubbub of voices addressing her. Opening her eyes, Dorothea sees the vague outline of a familiar chandelier overhead and realizes that she is in her room. Suddenly she hears the Emperor's voice and sits up on the bed listening. Behind the half-open door, she sees her father and a wet nurse who tells the Emperor about how she and the princess were attacked. Dorothea is touched that the Emperor has come here for her, and because she was almost killed. However, in the next moment, all feelings collapse as she hears her father complain that they are a lot of trouble. The Emperor orders the wet nurse to find the one who gave out the information and officially deny the rumors of the princess's abduction. Dorothy sits on the bed and thinks about how, even though she is good to behave, her father still doesn't love her. The princess believes that everything that happens to her is a punishment for the fact that in a past life, she was a tyrant. A few days later, the imperial doctor informs Dorothy of her weak condition, despite a decrease in temperature. Next to the doctor stands a maid, whom the girl sees for the first time. Dorothy is upset to realize that her wet nurse has been fired because she knows that it was not her fault. The nurse had always taken care of the princess, and now she had no choice but to hope that the woman would be all right. In order to recover from the shock as soon as possible, the doctor advises the princess to go on vacation to a quieter and more peaceful place. The girl is offered to go to Ceridian's domain, and suddenly she realizes what a great opportunity it is. After all, now she will be able to leave the palace and distance herself from Karnan, Ray, and Theon with Julia, who will soon go into epistemy. Deciding for herself that she can gain strength there, Dorothea declares her intention to go on vacation. There is a knock on the door, and Raymond appears on the threshold with a bouquet of garden roses for his sister, as he did every day after the kidnapping. The prince learns that Dorothy is going to go to Cerishian to the sea. He is upset and does not want her to leave. Raymond feels guilty about kidnapping Dorothy, but she tries to convince him otherwise. To dissuade the princess from leaving, Ray offers to help her enter the epistemia. The prince does not know that Karnan ordered Dorothy to refuse to enter the academy, and continues to persuade her. Realizing that he is doing this with good intentions, the princess insists that she needs treatment. Raymond, who had been asked by the tired Dorothy to leave the room, looked at his sister in distress and went out. Only a few days have passed, and the princess is already ready to go, grateful to Karnan for his indifference that caused her to leave the castle so soon. Suddenly, the girl is distracted from her thoughts by someone's voice that addresses her. Turning around, Dorothea sees a smiling Theon in front of her, who says that he has learned about her trip. The princess reluctantly answers him because now she did not want to see him at all. Theon puts his hand in his pocket to get a gift he has prepared for the princess. The boy hands Dorothy the sweets he brought in case the princess gets sick on the way. Theon is saddened that he will not be able to see the princess often, but hopes that she will soon recover and return to the capital. In her previous life, Dorothy did not feel anything like this. It seems to her that Theon likes her, but she pushes these thoughts away from herself. The princess turns around and hurries to leave as soon as possible. She is embarrassed by these thoughts. Looking after her, Theon clenches his hands into fists, hoping that he and the princess will meet again. Sitting in the carriage, Dorothy urged herself to be cool and not to give in to feelings. However, she cannot get out of her head the idea that he took care of her and brought her sweets on the road. And now, Dorothea stands on the balcony and listens to the sound of the sea, breathing deeply as soon as she leaves the imperial palace. Here, in this place, there is no trace of her being a tyrant, and perhaps this is where she can start all over again. In the Saritian domain, the princess is looked after by the servant of the castle, Carl. She also introduces Dorothea to the knight Stephen Greenwall, who is also assigned to serve under the princess. The girl looks at him and recognizes him as a knight from her past life, who reached the rank of vice captain in the best knightly order, and she took his life. Dorothy looks at him and realizes that if he is 18 years old now, he has just joined the order, and instead of being promoted, he is assigned to her as a guard. Because of this, Stefan seems unhappy to Dorothy, and she holds out her hand to him as a sign of her respect. In response, as a sign of friendship, the knight claps the princess on the palm of her hand. Sitting in her room, Dorothy decides to write down a list of criteria for a prosperous life. Scratching paper with a pen, she catches herself thinking that she herself does not understand what it means to live a prosperous life. She decides to ask for advice from Clara, who brought her tea and cookies. The maid believes that it is necessary to obey her parents first, but this criterion does not suit Dorothy. Looking into the princess's notebook, Clara sees that the girl is going to write a wish list for a prosperous life and begins to laugh. Angry with the servant, the princess orders not to laugh at her. Clara convinces the princess that she is not laughing out of malice, but because she thinks Dorothea's preoccupation is cute. To begin with, Clara suggests that the girl start smiling more often, and Dorothy realizes that she has not yet had a reason to do so. But the first thing that comes to mind when you think of a good person is a smile on his face, and so Dorothy tries to smile. However, a couple of seconds later, from unaccustomed to pushing, the princess had a cramp on her lips. Dorothea pushed the servants out of the room, saying that she needed to think it over. Taking a pen in her hand, she begins the list, and the first thing she learns is to learn how to smile in a friendly way every day. The second point Dorothy writes down is not to look at someone else's things and remember that the throne belongs to Ray and Theon belongs to Julia. With the third point, the princess undertakes to save 1 million people and vows to hear words of gratitude 3 times a week and donate money to charity every month. When Dorothy finishes writing, she goes through the list to make sure that it is enough for a successful life for now. Tired of sitting at the table, the princess, stretching, goes out onto the balcony to listen to the sound of the sea. She informs the servants standing outside the door of her intention to go out for a walk to the water. Despite the fact that Dorothy wanted to walk alone, Stefan still follows her, but walks silently and does not interfere with her. Suddenly, in the distance, the girl sees a man sitting on the beach with his knees propped up. She is surprised that someone else lives in the vicinity. As she gets closer, she sees a blonde boy whom she recognizes as Eden Bronte. In a past life, he was the chief confidant of the tyrant Dorothea Milaneo and the most beautiful man she knew. In noble circles, he was called the Golden-Eyed Angel, and everyone, whether men or women, wanted to say at least a few words to him, so magnificent he was. A faithful servant, ready to act only for Dorothea's sake, gave her everything she loved. It was he who helped her get rid of Ray, and then killed Julia for her, and he did it to everyone the Empress hated. He alone understood her feelings, and she thought that she had found only a faithful servant, although he wanted so much to be in Theon's place. However, it is unlikely that he did all this just for her, because when Dorothea went to the place of her execution, many people found Eden innocent. He, like a snake, with the help of his tongue, was able to obtain amnesty by declaring that he was under the rule of a tyrant. As she gets closer, the princess thinks that she would be better off staying away from Eden in this life. However, when she looks more closely, she notices that the boy is crying bitterly. Dorothy is surprised because this boy is completely different from the one she knew in a past life. Suddenly, the thought dawns on her that perhaps Eden also has a chance to live his life differently and not step on the path of evil. The princess comes closer to the boy. He notices her, looks at her anxiously and frightened. Embarrassed by the outside presence, Eden jumps up and runs away, ignoring Dorothy's request to stop. Here it is necessary to tell a little about Eden, who was the illegitimate son of the Duke of Bronte. The Duke adopted him into the family, but until he came of age, the boy could not enter the academy and did not have the right to show himself in high society. After meeting Eden, who is in the same situation as her, Dorothy feels tired and decides to return home. As soon as word spreads in Seretiana that the princess of the capital has arrived, all the prominent families begin to send her letters offering to visit her in order to establish a relationship with her. Dorothea pays short visits. All the ladies around are fascinated by her beauty and pretty. The princess quickly gets tired of the spotlight and asks Stefan and Clara to take her away. The Duchess of Bronte, sitting nearby, invites Dorothea to visit them. Deciding that this is a great chance to meet Eden and put him on the right path, the princess happily agrees. And the very next day, the princess visits the Duke's castle, where she is met by the Bronte spouses. The princess is invited to a richly decorated table, but looking back, she does not see Eden anywhere. Dorothy asks the owners of the castle about their son, but they say that he is in an epistemia, thinking that the princess meant George. She folds her hands to her chin and with a serious expression on her face declares her desire to see Eden. Upon learning that the princess saw the boy on the beach, the couple whisper about something for a long time. They inform her that Eden is sick, but she stands her ground and insists on meeting him. Dorothea is led to the winter garden, where a boy sits at a round coffee table in the middle of pots of flowers. Hearing approaching footsteps, he turns around and looks attentively at the guest with his golden eyes. They stare at each other in silence for a few seconds, and then Eden smiles modestly at Dorothy. The boy stands up, greets the princess, and introduces himself to her, expressing his joy at her visit. The princess dismisses her escorts, as she wants to be alone with Eden. The boy asks what brought Dorothy to these parts, pretending that he did not meet her a few days ago on the beach. Eden looks anxiously at the girl's thin hands. She claims that she is on the mend and she likes living in this city. Dorothy studies every word and movement of the boy, but cannot understand whether he is genuinely kind to her or hides his feelings. Remembering his habit of raising an eyebrow when lying, the princess keeps a close eye on his eyebrows. She compliments him and he lowers his eyes in embarrassment, covering his face with his hand. Dorothy realizes that the Eden she knew before would not be embarrassed, but would behave defiantly. Suddenly, without expecting it, the boy says that he has never met anyone more beautiful than the princess. Now Dorothea realizes that she is confused, because what he says now may be flattery. Dorothea remembers how she used to always be fooled by his sweet words, and now, having decided that she will become his friend, she invites Eden to her castle. Delighted at the invitation, the boy happily jumps up from his chair and, instantly finding himself next to the princess, kisses her on the cheek. Dorothea was pleased to note that she could add Eden's thanks to her list. However, in the evening, sitting at her notebook and remembering Eden's smiling face, she again doubts his sincerity. Meanwhile, at the castle, Clara informs Stefan that the princess's birthday is approaching. The girl is inspired. She wants to organize a wonderful day for Dorothea. Since Dorothea does not like dresses or jewelry, the maid shares her idea of a gift for the girl with the night. Clara is excited about the upcoming holiday and asks Stefan to help her with the organization. And then the long-awaited day comes for Clara. She enters the princess's room, blowing up a festive firecracker. The maid tried very hard to set a rich table with a variety of treats. Dorothy is grateful to Clara, who invites the girl to take a walk because the weather outside is so wonderful. The princess agrees, and they go to the coast to breathe the sea air. Suddenly, on the shore, they notice a shell, which Clara insistently asks the birthday girl to pick up. Dorothy decides that perhaps the maid hid a gift under the shell because her words sound quite playful. However, after sorting through a whole mountain of shells, the princess still does not find anything under them. Turning around, Dorothy notices that Clara is not there, and seeing a silhouette in the distance, she thinks that the maid has gone somewhere. However, looking closer, the girl realizes that a lion is heading towards her at a brisk pace. The princess realizes that Stefan is standing in front of her in a lion costume but does not show it, so as not to spoil the surprise. Dorothea remembers reading a complicated book she had recently wrapped in a cover from the fairy tales of the lion hero Leo, and apparently Clara had decided that it was the princess's favorite hero. Remembering her promise to be kind, Dorothy decides to play along with the servants and gives the lion shells picked up on the shore. Making a fake face, she asks the lion if his arrival is connected with her birthday. The princess feels a feeling of care that she has never experienced before and thanks the lion from the bottom of her heart. Another moment, and the princess finds herself in the arms of a fairy tale hero who gently hugs the girl to himself. Dorothy can't believe that she is now being held by the knight she has laughed at in the past because he chose a bloody death in the name of the prince. She sees similarities in their fates because Stefan also has to make his way on his own since he was not part of the noble circles. Thinking about all this, Dorothea realizes that Stefan has always been a good and brave man. It begins to rain, and the knight in the costume of a lion runs back to the castle so that she does not catch a cold. The princess says goodbye to the lion hero without giving herself away that she recognizes him as Stefan. Changing into dry clothes and wiping her wet hair, Dorothea examines the letter she received from the capital. Upon learning that this is a letter from Raymond, the girl throws it on the table into a pile of the same unread letters received earlier. Stefan returns to the castle, he and Clara whispering about something, pleased that they think they managed to trick the princess. Continuing to play along with them, Dorothea wonders where Stefan has been all this time. The knight already had a prepared answer that he was in training, but the princess is not going to give up and asks why he did not prepare a gift for her. She wants him to teach her swordsmanship as a gift, so that if the kidnapping happens again, she can fight back against the attackers. Dorothy hadn't done it before, worrying that if she got stronger, she would want more, but now she realized that good people can be strong. Clutching the princess's small hands in his large hands, Stefan agrees to teach her how to fight with swords. And now, a few months later, Dorothea is already confidently wielding a homemade wooden sword. The girl does not understand why Stefan does not allow her to fight with real swords, out of fear that she will get hurt, or out of jealousy that she is so good at it. On another day of grueling training, Dorothea is distracted by the sound of someone's approaching footsteps. Thinking that Stefan is sneaking up to attack from behind, the princess abruptly turns around and swings her sword. However, she stops in time, recognizing Eden in the newcomer, who admires the girl's talent because he himself does not know how to fight. Dorothea recalls that in his past life, Eden had never picked up a sword because he had many supporters who did it instead of him. The boy is glad that the princess has recovered and, stretching out his hand to her, wipes the sweat from her forehead with a handkerchief. The maids, peeping out from behind the bushes, watch the conversation of two little angels in tenderness. Taking Dorothy's hand, Eden reminds Dorothy that she invited him to visit the castle. He asks her to show him the estate, continuing to hold the princess's hand. Thinking that her hands must be sticky with sweat, Dorothy goes to the bathroom to wash herself. After taking a bath and changing clothes, she brings Eden to her room. The boy is impressed by the neatness of the princess's chambers. After looking around and rustling in his pockets, Eden pulls out the gift he brought and hands it to Dorothea. The boy unwraps the package and Dorothy sees a magnificent gold necklace studded with rubies and diamonds. The princess understands that this is a very expensive gift, but Eden is also from the family of dukes and apparently can afford it. Dorothy politely refuses such an expensive gift. She wants only sincerity from it. Eden is upset by the refusal of the princess, who explained that it is better to give such a thing to dear and close people. The boy admits that he must have been too excited that someone approached him first, and Dorothea is once again convinced of how skillfully he plays on human feelings. Turning around, Eden notices letters from the imperial palace on the table and asks the princess about them. Never opening the letters, Dorothy assumed that they were a whining about how hard it was for Ray to study epistemia. Dismissing the thought of Rhea, the princess invites Eden to leave the room, but suddenly he freezes near the chest of drawers. Dorothea turns around and sees that the boy is standing right in front of Theon's handkerchief, which he left for her when they met at the coronation. She runs headlong to the chest of drawers, grabs the handkerchief and hides it in a drawer, hoping that Eden did not have time to see the initials embroidered on it. But apparently the boy had time to see the handkerchief, for he promised Dorothy that he would give her just such a gift next time. Approaching the door to leave the room, Eden silently glances at the dresser once more. In the morning, sitting at breakfast, Dorothy feels some tension that reigns in the castle. Clara advises her to return to the imperial palace as a terrible contagious disease is spreading in the city. Many people die from the disease because the drugs to treat are too expensive for ordinary people. Dorothy thinks, because she does not want to leave this beautiful place where she is so calm. The princess realizes that this is a great chance to expand her list and decides to help people with healers and medicines. With so much money, Dorothea can finally do something good for others. And now, a couple of weeks later, Clara happily informs the princess that thanks to her, the village, which was languishing from infection, has regained its vitality. With tears of joy, the maid admires Dorothy's kindness, and Eden stands next to her, appearing as if out of nowhere. The princess does not know whether spending money, of which she has a lot, can be considered kind, but in gratitude she receives gifts from the inhabitants, which they leave near the palace. Eden convinces Dorothy that people pay for good and will always remember her as a good princess. Until now, she hadn't been able to feel that she had done anything good, but now she was happy to feel someone else's gratitude. Dorothea suggests that Eden stay for dinner, asks Clara to cook the potatoes she gave her, and to plant the sprouted tubers in the garden. 3 years later, Dorothea was still intensively engaged in fencing with Stefan and achieved great success in it. Of course, these successes are still not enough to overcome Stefan. Apparently in a past life, she managed to do this since she was older. Noticing that his shoulder is open for a blow, Dorothy rushes at the knight and raises her sword over him. However, Stefan blocks her blow and keeps the homemade sword from striking. Dorothea is furious, for if it were a real sword, he would not be able to grasp the blade with his bare hands. Meanwhile, in Epistemia, Raymond yearns, having written another letter to his sister, because in 3 years she has not answered him once. Theon comes up, patting Ray on the shoulder in a friendly way, reassures him, assuring him that Dorothy is reading his letters. The boy suggests that his friend go to visit the princess because soon the holidays will begin in the Epistemia. Raymond is delighted with Theon's idea. He jumps for joy at the thought of meeting his sister soon. Dorothy doesn't stop asking Stefan to let her fight with real swords. Clara, who has been waiting for them for dinner for a long time, examines the knight's splintered hands with horror. She takes the princess to take a bath and scolds her for being so absorbed in swordsmanship. The maid tells Dorothy that the locals still bring vegetables to the castle as a token of gratitude. The princess looks out of the window and notices a boy behind the bushes, who, leaving the bag, stealthily runs away from the garden. Dorothea thinks about catching him next time and inviting him to dinner. Letters come from the capital again. This time there are 2 of them at once, and the princess notices that one of them is not for her. She calls Stefan because the letter from the Order of Chivalry is addressed to him. It informs about the promotion exam, thanks to which Stefan will have the opportunity to become a knight of the highest rank. This is good news, but it does mean that Stefan may be leaving Cerishian soon. Dorothy thinks the exam is a great opportunity for the knight and asks him to show her the letter. It says that the exam date is set for quite a short time, so you need to leave right this week. The letter also says that the Imperial Palace will no longer provide the princess with a personal knight for protection. Dorothea asks Clara not to worry because they live in a quiet place, and besides, Stefan has taught her swordsmanship. Clara leaves, and Dorothy praises Stefan, noting that this is a great chance for him to be promoted, because by staying with her, he is standing still. The princess wants to organize a decent send-off for him and asks him to stay until the day after tomorrow. The knight kneels down in front of the girl, and she repeats her request to stay longer. Stefan takes the princess's hands in his and, after a short silence, tells her that he is her personal knight. He considers it his mission and duty to be there and protect her. Dorothy is touched, but she does not understand why she is surrounded by such fools who refuse profit and act at a loss. However, Stefan doesn't think he can look like a fool just because he's doing a job he enjoys. Dorothea looks at him and remembers that he behaved the same way before her reincarnation, protecting Ray even when it became obvious that he had lost. Thinking that Stefan has always been a man who makes stupid choices, the girl throws herself on his neck. She hugs her knight tightly, mentally thanking him for a choice that no one else would have made in his place. In the afternoon, Dorothea, accompanied by Stephen, goes to the town square, which is full of people today. Because of the crowd, the princess does not see what is happening, and the knight takes her in his arms. Finding herself above the human heads piled up against the wall, Dorothea sees an announcement about a tournament for amateur swordsmen. Registration for the competition began today, and the princess persuaded Stefan to sign her up for participation. The man at the check-in makes fun of Dorothy, but the girl does not back down. He is angry with her bickering and accuses her of being ill-mannered. Hearing the insults addressed to her parents, Dorothy becomes furious and can hardly hold on so as not to break down. However, Stefan immediately comes to her aid, sticking his sharp sword into the man's table, right between his hands. He orders the boor to follow the rules, and the boor, trembling, hands Droda a piece of paper for registration. Leaving the tent, the princess happily thanks the knight for his help and offers to return to the castle. Meanwhile, two boys are walking through the square, one walking in front, scolding the other loaded with boxes and demanding to be called a young master, not a brother. Suddenly, the boy drops the boxes and their contents break, which causes anger in the elder. Dorothy turns around at the noise and decides to do a good deed before returning and help the boy. Collecting the fragments, the boy hurts himself and screams, and the princess recognizes Eden in his voice. Angered even more at his half-brother, Jonathan waves his hand at Eden, ready to strike. However, he is stopped by Dorothea, who stands between them, shielding the boy with herself. At the same moment, Stefan grabs Jonathan by the arm, and he can only get angry and try to escape from the knight's strong arms. Pleased with her good deed for today, Dorothy reaches out to Eden and helps him up from the ground. The enraged guy, not knowing that it is a princess in front of him, is indignant that she dared to contradict the Duke's son. Dorothea, who has decided that she will not be angry, silently turns, takes Eden by the wrist, and leads him with her. The princess thanks Stefan for his help, and the boy is touched by the princess's care. Eden, upset that she let go of his hand, decides to draw the princess's attention back to himself and screams. Turning to him, Dorothea notices that his cheek is swollen, but he claims that this often happens to him. Eden asks the princess to stay with her until Jonathan stops being angry. Dorothy does not recognize the old Eden in this boy who suffers insults and invites him to her castle. As soon as the princess enters the threshold of the castle, a joyful Ray, who missed his sister so much, flies out to meet her. Dorothy learns that there is a vacation in the epistemia, and the prince, taking advantage of this, decided to visit her. Ray throws herself on her neck, squeezing and hugging her, and then Dorothy notices that the prince has not come alone. Right in front of her stands Theon, who does not hide his joy at the long-awaited meeting with the princess. Dorothy pronounces his name in surprise. He is glad that she remembers him, and Eden, standing at a distance, watches intently. Upon learning that Ray has invited Theon to go to Sarishan with him, Dorothea grabs him by the arm and drags him out of the room. Locked in her room, Dorothy listens to the excuses of her brother, who missed her and wanted to surprise her. She scolds the prince for causing disaster by coming without permission and bringing Theon with him, and kicks them out. Raymond begins to cry. He is upset that she did not answer his letters, and he was worried about her. Angry at Ray's tears and making her look like a villainess again, Dorothy grabs the doorknob to get out. However, when she opens it, she finds herself face to face with Theon, who is concerned about the princess's behavior. Dorothea breaks down and hurriedly runs away, ignoring Theon, who is trying to stop her. However, he catches up with her and grabs her by the arm. Dorothea stops, her heart beating wildly in her breast. She had waited so long for him to take her hand, and now he was holding her, and she could not turn around, feeling unworthy. Theon asks her to give him a minute, apologizes for the unexpected visit, and admits that he really wanted to see her. Still holding her hand, he kneels down in front of the princess, expressing a desire to get along with her. Tears come to Dorothea's eyes because in her past life she asked Theon for this so often, but he did not meet her halfway. Suddenly, the silence between them is interrupted by Eden approaching, complaining of pain in his cheek. Dorothea apologizes to the guest for forgetting about him, takes the boy by the hand, and leads him away for medicine. As he leaves, Eden gives Theon a long look, and Theon stares back into his eyes. Dorothy brings the boy into the room, and after asking him to wait for her at the door, she goes to the closet. Sorting through the boxes of medicines, she mentally blames herself for running away from Theon so ugly when he asked her to get along. Dorothy hands Eden the vial, but he gives it to her because he thinks she needs it more because she looks sick. The princess is afraid that he has noticed something about her attitude towards Theon, and Eden, leaning over her, whispers that he likes her. Dorothea pushes him away. She doesn't like such jokes, and Eden remarks that she must be sick since she doesn't even smile at these jokes. She kicks the boy out of the room, and in the corridor he meets Theon again. Adon Bronte introduces himself to him and tells him that the princess herself put the medicine on his cheek. Theon Freed also introduces himself to Eden and is about to enter Dorothea's room, but he stops him. He explains that the princess was very tired after fencing lessons and the subsequent walk around the city with Eden. To prove his intimacy with Dorothy to the surprised Theon, he informs him that he sees her once or twice a week. The boys look into each other's eyes again, and Eden, admitting that he has blurted out too much, bows and leaves. Dorothy sits in the room, upset that she looks stupid and unable even to smile at Theon, and she has been rehearsing her smile for so long. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door. The princess wipes tears from her face and opens the door. Stefan is standing on the threshold. Dorothy asks him to come in and, sitting next to her on the sofa, asks him to listen to her. She tells of a nightmare in which she loved a man, but he hated her so much that he eventually died in her room. Dorothy shares her fear that she is destined to be a villain, as she even caused her mother's death. Suddenly, Stefan grabs the girl, hugs her tightly, and gently strokes her back. The knight claims that the princess is a kind girl, and she becomes much better and calmer. Burying her nose in his shoulder, Dorothy thanks Stefan and mentally asks him for forgiveness for killing him in a past life. Clara, who is looking for the princess throughout the castle, hears sobs behind one of the doors. Believing it to be Dorothy, the maid enters the room, only to find Ray crying on the floor with his knees crossed. Raymond is saddened that his sister called his arrival a disaster. He thinks she hates him. It hurts him to look like a fool in Dorothy's eyes when he was just worried and missed her. Clara tries to prove to Ray that he cannot be a fool, if only because he studies at the best educational institution in the Empire. The boy admits that he took only 80th place out of 100, and he does not know how to win Dorothea's love. Clara remembers that the princess did not even open her brother's letter, and thinks about how they can be reconciled. She informs her that Dorothy loves swordsmanship, and Ray decides to take part in the tournament to win her sister's attention. Theon enters the room and announces his intention to leave the castle as the princess is ill. Worried, Clara runs to visit Dorothy, leaving the boys to rest in the room. Theon thinks he shouldn't have come, but Ray is quick to take the blame. At this moment, Theon's gaze falls on the bedside table. She notices her handkerchief, which she gave to the princess at the reception of the emperor. He was sure that she threw him away, but now there is hope in his soul. Night has fallen, and Dorothy, suffering from insomnia, goes out on the balcony to breathe and listen to the silence. She looks at the stars and fiddles with Theon's handkerchief in her hands, wondering if it would be better to give it to its owner. A sudden gust of wind tears the handkerchief from her hands, and Dorothy does not have time to catch it. Leaning over the railing, the princess sees how the fallen handkerchief is picked up by Theon, who was walking in the garden at that moment. The girl blushes with embarrassment and hurries to report that she was going to return the thing to its owner. Finally, Dorothy smiles, and Theon, complimenting her smile, asks her to stay on the balcony. He tests the strength of the tree and begins to climb it, closer and closer to the princess's balcony. He was sitting with his legs dangling in the tree, face to face with Dorothea, thanking her for waiting for him. The girl can barely hold back tears because it was he who always ran away from her in a past life, and now he is grateful that she did not run away. The princess stretches out her hand to him and asks him to climb up to her because it is not safe to sit on a branch, and she is afraid for him. Theon cannot understand Dorothea, but he stretches out his hand to her and descends from the tree onto the balcony. The boy thinks that the princess is uncomfortable with him, but she is in a hurry to dissuade him from this. He admits that he missed her, but did not write letters because he thought that she did not love them, and now he is very happy to be around. Dorothy's heart is pounding. It all seems like a dream to her because he has eluded her so many times in the past. Theon admits that he enjoys going out at night, and this is likely due to the fact that he belongs to the Freed family. Dorothea remembers how in his past life he liked to go to bed late and take a nap during the day. Theon wishes the princess goodnight and hands her his handkerchief, which he picked up from the ground under the balcony. Dorothy thanks Theon because she has never received gifts from him before. Returning to the bedroom, the girl clutches a handkerchief in her hand. Feelings overwhelm her. However, she pushes these thoughts away by reminding herself that Theon belongs to Julia, and she wrote it down as a rule in her notebook. In the morning, Dorothy wakes up to the fact that the morning silence is broken by Clara's scream, who has learned that the princess has signed up for the tournament. Trying not to give away the true reason for her anxiety, the maid worries about the disaster that will happen if Ray and Dorothy collide in the tournament. And then the time for the competition came. The princess, accompanied by Clara, Stefan, Ray, and Theon, came to the square. Brother and sister look at each other and realize that both have come not to root for each other, but to fight. Dorothea decides not to give up what she wants, only because of Ray. She prepares for the competition without worry. The princess learns from the list of participants that she will be fighting someone named Alex, and Clara is glad that her opponent is not Ray. Apparently, the participants were distributed evenly so that older guys would go to the next round. As the tournament is organized by the Bronte family, Eden is also in the square and hears Dorothy and the maid talking. When he learns that the princess has a very strong rival, he asks his father to change the distribution to guys with similar physical characteristics. Eden explains this as an effort to make the tournament interesting for spectators, and the Duke praises him for his initiative. Upon learning that the distribution has changed, Alex assumes that Dorothy was frightened by his power. The princess is confident that she can defeat the braggart and challenges him to fight her on the tournament field. Dorothea asks the organizers not to change the distribution table and leave everything as it was originally. The competition begins, and Raymond is the first to be called on the battlefield. He is excited and looks for his sister in the crowd. Noticing her, he waves to her with the hope of support, but she does not pay attention to him. The signal sounds. The opponents come out facing each other. Raymond takes up his weapon. Dorothy notices how his gaze changes, which always changes at important moments, although he usually behaves like a naive fool. Only a minute had passed since the beginning of the fight, and Raymond had already knocked down the enemy, disarming him. Dorothea, ignoring her brother's joyful exclamations, concentrates on the field where the enemy is waiting for her. Eden is worried when he sees that the distribution has not been changed, as Alex is larger than the girl and can hurt her. The competition begins, and Dorothea, looking into the eyes of her surprised opponent, regrets only that the sword in her hands is not real. Taking advantage of his slowness, she disarms Alex, who is trembling either with anger or surprise. Dorothea is declared the winner of the second round, the admiring crowd whispers, wondering who she is. Theon, who watched the fight with a sinking heart, cannot take his eyes off the princess. Raymond admires Dorothy's talents, and she asks him not to show in public that they know each other. The prince is upset. Theon approaches him, and the boys talk about a possible meeting of brother and sister in the finale. They both climb to the finals without hindrance, and in the semifinals, the princess will have to compete with another newcomer, Joey. Dorothy looks at a boy who really wants to win, and he seems familiar to her. Starting the competition, the princess recognizes him as the same boy who left vegetables on the threshold of her castle. However, his abilities are not enough to defeat Dorothy, and he falls to the ground, upset that he will not be able to get the prize. He is angry because he could live on this money for a whole month and was even ready to sell his life for it. Dorothy thinks this is silly and advises Joy to find her if he ever has to sell his life for money, finally informing her that the potatoes he brought were delicious. And finally, the final, in which Raymond and Dorothea Milaneo will have to compete with each other. Standing in front of her sister, Ray offers to give her the first place without a fight, but Dorothy tells him not to give in. The princess does not like that everyone around her is confident in her victory. She does not want to look like a weakling in the eyes of others. Clara does not know which of the children she is rooting for, because she worries about both of them. Dorothy receives a blow on the arm, experiences severe pain, but immediately pulls herself together. Raymond is very concerned about hurting his sister and asks her for forgiveness. Dorothea is angry and demands that the prince concentrate and continue the competition. Ray is at a loss. He can't continue to compete with his sister like this. Noticing that he is giving in, Dorothy drops her sword and leaves the tournament field. Excited, Ray hurries after her, followed by the organizer of the event. Not noticing the cable that holds the tent under his feet, he stumbles over it. The structure begins to fall apart, and the beams are already slanted over Dorothy's head, who has stopped and is angry at Ray running after her. The next moment, everything happens too quickly. The princess abruptly pushes away her brother, who ran up to her, and now she was lying on the ground, and her right hand was pressed against the pavement by a large wooden pole. Eden and Theon, who have been watching what is happening, frightened, rush to her aid. Dorothy, with her arm bandaged, stands in front of Clara and Stefan, who chastise her for behaving so imprudently. She thinks that when they are both in danger, it is more important to save the prince. However, Clara and Stefan believe that the princess is more important to them. Dorothea thanks her faithful servants for such words. She is touched by their care. At the same time, Raymond is crying in contrition, admitting that his arrival actually turned out to be a disaster, as his sister said. Theon, who comes up from behind, calls out to his friend, but he sobs so selflessly that he does not hear him. The boy decides to leave the prince alone and goes out into the hall of the Bronte estate, where they all went to bandage Dorothy's broken arm. Not far from the column, Eden stands, his head propped up in his hands, apparently thinking about something. Noticing Theon, he gives him his assumption that Dorothy is uncomfortable in his presence and hints that he needs to leave. Theon studies Eden's unpleasant gaze and expresses his displeasure at his excessive interest in the princess. The boy does not deny this and admits that he likes Dorothea very much. Bronte sarcastically remarks that Theon must be familiar with this feeling because he has a lover, Julia. Theon denies the rumors and claims that he and Julia are just good friends. Dorothea thanks the Duke of Bronte for helping her with her treatment. Leaving the castle, she notices, not without pleasure, his brother George next to Eden, who bows to her, recognizing her as a princess. Eden wanted to say so much to Dorothea, but she went out without even looking at him. The sun is already slowly setting below the horizon, and the imperial carriage takes the prince and princess back to the castle. Raymond apologizes to his sister for hurting herself while saving him and asks her not to risk herself. Dorothy realizes that Ray has never been able to become a good emperor because he is too kind, and this needs to be fixed. Learning from her brother that he is ready to do anything for her, the princess asks him to do as she tells him from now on. Before going to bed, Clara informed Dorothy that Theon was leaving soon, so now the girl was lying in bed and could not close her eyes. She realizes that it is not known when they will be able to meet again, and so she jumps out of bed. Throwing a handkerchief over her shoulders, she goes out into the corridor where she meets Theon, who has just packed his bags for departure. Trying to calm the tremor in her voice, she explains that she has come to say goodbye to him. Smiling, he promises that by the time they meet next, he will be prepared enough to be able to protect her. Not recognizing him as the old Theon from her past, she gladly promises to answer all his letters. The guy is happy. A smile does not leave his face when he says goodbye to the princess. However, he suddenly stops Dorothy as she leaves to make sure she and Eden are just friends. Realizing that Eden Bronte's feelings for the princess are not mutual, Theon leaves the castle with a calm heart. Lying in bed, Dorothy doubts whether everything she saw was a dream or in reality, and imperceptibly falls asleep. She dreams of a past in which Eden whispered in her ear that she had every right to become empress. It was he who had inspired her that she was more worthy than others to take the throne, and that she would have no other chance if she did not act. On the day of her father's funeral, she came to the prince, whom the emperor ordered her to protect. Realizing that people would condemn her anyway, she attacked her brother to kill her only loved one. He asked Dorothea to surrender, as he was obviously stronger than her, but she did not stop and plunged her sword into his heart. Then she decided that he was so stupid that even in such a situation he showed hesitation, and then cried, addressing her affectionately in the face of death. Dorothea thought she was smiling at the throne, but tears were pouring from her eyes. The princess wakes up and over again twists the nightmare of memories in her head. She thinks that in today's tournament he just succumbed to her, not putting all his strength into the fight. Suddenly she realizes that perhaps then, in the past, he succumbed to her in the same way, sacrificing himself. Dorothea is distracted from her thoughts by the creak of the door that has opened a little, and someone enters the bedroom. The princess rises in bed and sees Raymond on the doorstep, who is worried that she cannot sleep due to pain in her arm. The boy walks over to Dorothy's bed, promising her to stay with her until she falls asleep. He carefully covers her with a blanket and tells her that he often misses her mother. Unlike him, Dorothea cannot miss her, as she considers herself responsible for her death. Raymond is angry at his sister for thinking that if she didn't exist, he would live happily with both parents. He is happy that he has such a sister, and he is sure that his mother would not regret that she gave birth to Dorothy because her death is not her fault. The princess listens to Ray and once again thinks about how stupid he is, but she is touched by his words. The prince invites Dorothy to go with him to Lampas and, having been refused, asks her to allow him to come to her again. Lying with her back to her brother, the princess promises him to think about his request. Hearing a sniffle behind her back, she rises and sees that Ray has fallen asleep with his head resting on the edge of her bed. She tries to wake him up, however. Instead of leaving, he plops down next to her on the pillow in his sleep, and she covers him. Dorothea looks at her brother, who has disturbed her feelings, and now sleeps next to her without hind legs. Morning has come, and Clara goes into Dorothy's bedroom to wake her up. Entering the room, she looks tenderly at her brother and sister sleeping next to her. All morning, Raymond complies with the princess's requests, and she believes that he has no dignity. Then a plan arises in her head, and she asks Ray to fetch paper and ink and write instead while her arm hurts. Dorothy imprisons him for a letter and dictates to him the lineage of the Milaneo family, demanding that he write down everything she says. The princess lists the names of all the emperors one by one, deciding to teach Raymond history. The sweaty prince, who does not leave the feeling that he is not helping Dorothy to study, but is studying himself, diligently continues to write. Suddenly, he stops and excitedly asks if she has received his letters, because there has never been an answer from her. To his suggestion that she was bored, Dorothy replies that she likes being alone. She doesn't really like being alone, but she's always understood that if no one loves her, she has to get used to being alone. With sadness in his voice, Ray asks the princess why she doesn't love him, and promises to do everything to improve and earn her love. Dorothy thinks about what her off, that Ray is so kind and that only he can see the spirit of light, that he gets more than her. But most of all, she is infuriated that in a past life he died at her hands, and only she remembers all these memories that cause pain. Recalling both fights with Ray, from the past and present, Dorothea asks her brother why he refused to win. He assures that he did not give up on victory and was not going to give in, but only worried about it. Dorothy admits that she doesn't like the fact that he is good, and she is evil. Tired, the princess plops down on the bed and invites Ray to continue her studies tomorrow. Bending over her, the prince promises that during the next exams, he will definitely enter the top 50 students of epistemia. Raymond plans to prove to his sister that he is not a fool and swears it to her on his fingers. Meanwhile, at the Bronte estate, Jonathan grabs Eden by the collar of his shirt and is angry that his brother did not tell him that the girl who stood up for him in the square was a princess. Smiling, Eden justifies himself by saying that his head was spinning while collecting the shattered fragments, and he forgot to introduce Dorothy. Jonathan's mother, who has arrived in time to shout and insult Eden, stands up for the boy. Hugging him as a punishment for Jonathan, she decides to cancel the party to which his friends have already been invited. With tears in his eyes, Eden asks his stepmother for permission to visit the princess who was injured at the Bronte family tournament. The woman praises Eden for his kind thoughts and advises him to prepare a gift for the princess. In the kitchen, Clara tries her best, and she cooks soup for the injured princess herself. After trying a little, she feels that something is missing from it, and she looks for someone among the people in the kitchen who can help her. Seeing Stefan coming out of the kitchen, she stops him and asks him to taste the soup. The knight praises the dish, and Clara, overjoyed, hits him on the arm with her fist so hard that the soup is poured over Stefan's shirt. The deposed servant promises to clean everything and begins to diligently rub the stain with a rag. Suddenly, Stefan breaks free, runs away from Clara, rushes around in a circle, and runs away, leaving the servant girl surprised by her behavior in the kitchen. Dorothea stands on the balcony, looking out to sea and enjoying the beautiful weather, thinking that Eden promised to visit her. At that very moment, Eden himself approaches, apologizing to the princess for being late. He expresses concern that the injury will prevent her from practicing fencing. Noticing that a cool evening is blowing from the sea, the boy takes off his jacket and throws it over Dorothea's shoulders. The princess smells the scent of flowers that always surrounds Edana Bronte. He hands the girl a gift, neatly wrapped in a bundle and tied with a golden bow. Remembering that she did not accept his previous gift, Eden unwraps it and takes out a handkerchief with a sword embroidered on it. Dorothea thanks the boy, and remembering that in a past life she had such a handkerchief, asks where he got it. It turned out that Eden had asked to make it specifically for a princess who liked swords. In response to gratitude, the boy embarrassedly asks Dorothea to fulfill his request. It is that she allows her to sign on her plaster cast, and the princess agrees. Entering the room and taking a pen from the table, Eden writes on the bandages what he has long wanted to say to Dorothea. He wrote that the beautiful pearl ripens thanks to old wounds and shines brighter when the night ends. Upon learning that he, Eden, was initially sure that she would let him sign, Dorothy realizes that she has once again succumbed to his plans. Smiling, the boy asked the princess for permission to visit her again soon. A month passes. Dorothy sits in her room, reading a book and thinking about how the castle has become calm again since Ray's departure. Clara runs into the room and gives the princess a letter she received from the Imperial Palace. From it, Dorothy learns that she must fulfill her duties and meet someone from the Hark royal family. The princess remembers how she killed Hark when she ascended the throne in a previous life, but she cannot remember why she did so. At this very moment, a memory pierces her mind. The reason for her action was none other than Eden Bronte. Nereus Hark had a fiancée, Monica, whose family decided to get engaged for political reasons. However, at the debutante ball, she, like many other girls, fell in love with Eden, and he only enjoyed it. Monica announced to Nereus that the engagement had broken off, and that even if she was not destined to be with Eden, she did not want to marry without feelings. Angered, Nereus decided that Eden was the cause of all his troubles, and when he saw him anywhere, he humiliated and mocked him in every possible way. However, Eden did not remain in debt and replied that Nereus could not keep his beloved because of his helplessness. After that, Nereus, as soon as he ascended the throne, immediately attacked the Empire, and Dorothea and Eden were able to stop this. Hark has never liked Dorothy, but now things should be different, so she decides to create a positive image of the Bronte family. The princess wants the relationship between Eden and Nereus to be normal in this life and not lead to a conflict between the empires. Deciding not to delay, Dorothea orders Clara to prepare a carriage to go to the Bronte estate. Sitting over a cup of tea with Eden, they discuss the imminent visit of Hark's delegation. The boy informs her that he plans to greet them with her, and Dorothy chokes at the surprise, for she is sure that Eden will be hidden as an illegitimate child. The boy wants to ask his parents to take him to the appointment, because the prince from Hark is the same age as him. Dorothea does not like this idea, because Nereus will not even reckon with an illegitimate child who does not study in epistemia. The Duke of Bronte will regret bringing Eden into the world, and the boy will be wounded. Not knowing how to dissuade him from the idea, Dorothy decides to tell him that she has seen an astrologer who informs him that Eden will have a stronger aura of death if he meets Hark's representatives. Eden laughs embarrassedly because it turns out that the princess is interested in him from an astrologer. Dorothea realizes that she was a little stupid in rushing to name such a reason, but she did not have time to come up with anything smarter. Eden looks at the princess and tries to find out what else the astrologer has told her about him with a smile on his face. He agrees to her request not to date Hark, but in return asks to accompany her when she makes her debut in high society. Before her rebirth, Dorothea did not have a partner. The place of an escort in the palace was considered almost a punishment. In the end, Ray recommended his friend Theon as an escort, and he could not refuse. It was then that Dorothy fell in love with him, which later turned out to be a misfortune for Theon. The princess was carried away by memories of the time when Carnon insisted on their engagement in order to build a bridge with the freed family. Eden repeats his question and asks Dorothy to promise that she will reach out to him on the day of her debut. Deciding for herself that this is only for the best, the princess swears in her promise on her fingers. A few days later, Nereus Ponce of the Hark Kingdom stands in front of Dorothea. The princess tries to set herself up for good, despite the arrogant look of the guest, because she plans to improve relations. Nereus stands silent and motionless, and the servants rush to inform him that the princess is in front of him. However, the guest ridicules Dorothea for not knowing how to control spirits. Within the Ponce royal family, the power of the water spirit has been passed down from generation to generation, with which they still maintain a close bond today. Nereus does not agree to call a princess someone who does not know how to handle spirits and has not even been able to enter the epistemia. Dorothea informs him that she did not enter it of her own free will, and not because she could not. With her diplomatic behavior, she proves that she is much more educated than Nereus, although she does not study epistemia. They look into each other's eyes with burning hatred, without interrupting the verbal skirmish. Sitting over a cup of tea, Dorothea, without losing her dignity, reveals to Nereus all her scientific knowledge. In order not to lag behind, he recalls that military affairs are also studied in epistemia. Dorothy then calmly invites him to fight swords and asks him to behave politely if she wins. Nereus was absolutely sure of his victory, but almost immediately after the start of the fight, Dorothea disarms him. The princess mocks his abilities, because she took up a sword for the first time after removing the cast, but even so, he could not defeat her. Angered, Nereus summons the spirit of water, and Dorothea circles in a violent whirlpool in front of the frightened servants. The water makes it difficult for the princess to breathe, and she is afraid to realize that due to her inability to summon spirits, Ubera may soon be consumed by Hark. Gaining strength from the anger that overwhelms her, Dorothy raises her sword and cuts the water with a swing. Nereus cannot believe his eyes, because the princess was able to resist the spirit without having the ability. Dorothea assures Clara and Stefan that she is all right and gets back on her feet. With a confident step, she approaches Nereus, demanding that the sword be raised again to continue the fight. He justifies himself by saying that the powers of the spirit are also one of the methods of battle, but Dorothea does not mind Nereus using his powers. She is confident in herself, and the very next moment she disarms him again and puts a sword to his neck. Sitting in the room combing her hair, the princess reassures a worried Clara that she is fine. However, unpleasant thoughts are spinning in her head. She does not understand why she needed this victory, whether she really wanted to go over her heads again. A worried Eden enters the room, apparently aware of what happened. Dorothea assures him that everything is fine, but she can't stop thinking about how the water spirit will consume Ubera with Hark. Eden is worried because the princess always says that everything is fine, but it is written on her face that everything is completely wrong. In order to somehow entertain Dorothy, the boy offers her to play the violin for her, and everyone is delighted with his talent. Suddenly, the game is interrupted by a knock at the door, and the princess, recognizing Nereus's voice in the arrival, jumps up from her seat. Grabbing Eden's hand, she hides him behind a curtain and orders him not to move, because he promised not to meet Ponce. Without waiting for an invitation and pushing away Clara, who has come out to meet her, Nereus unceremoniously enters Dorothea's room. Looking at her, he notices that she is not injured, and the princess orders him to briefly explain to her the purpose of his visit. Nereus apologizes for using his power on an ordinary person who doesn't know how to control spirits, and Dorothy, barely restraining herself, accepts the apology and asks him to leave. The intruder gives the princess an invitation from his father to attend an evening meal, where the Duke of Bronte will also be present. Dorothea does not want to go, but it is impolite to decline the king's invitation, so she tells Clara to prepare everything necessary for the exit. Nereus asks who played the violin before he arrives, but Dorothy claims he heard it and hurries out. Pons glances at Stefan, who is standing motionless by the curtain, who promises to catch up with them as soon as he is done. Sitting at the table with the guests, King Harka tries to defuse the situation after the incident between his son and the princess. He hopes for Dorothea's understanding and notices that she is becoming more and more like Empress Alice. The princess saw a portrait of her mother who belonged to one of the branches of Freed, and she liked the woman in the portrait. Leaving the estate, Dorothy is indignant at the words of the king, who hinted that the princess is not invited to the capital, although she has recovered. Suddenly, she remembers the groceries that Joy brought her every month and learns that there has been no news from him for 2 months. And at that very moment, when she remembers him and wonders if something has happened, he flies up to the princess. Stefan pushes the impudent boy away from Dorothea, but he does not give up and demands to talk to the princess. He falls to his knees in front of her and asks for help, because she promised that she would help him if he ever had to sell his life. Sitting in the princess's carriage, Joy tells her that his father owes money to the mayor, and now she and her younger brother will be taken to the mine. Fearing for the boy's life, the princess agrees to help the children, but in return, she demands that one condition be met. Dorothea visits the mayor and gives him a chest full of gold bars. The man claims that there is much more in the chest than the debt. Dorothea asks to use the money to pay off the debts of all the children working in the mine, and not to use child labor anymore. Before her rebirth, when she introduced a law banning child labor, she was very criticized. Now she is not an empress and has no right to do this, but she hopes that she was able to help at least someone. Joy is surprised that the princess is going to go with him after his brother. Taking Stefan with them, they all set off together, because it is not known what can happen. Dorothea looks around in horror, looking around at a poor neighborhood she has never been to before. People around looked at the arrivals with interest, because even in simple clothes, the girl did not look like a poor woman. The princess is surprised how people can live in a house made of only oblique boards. When they open the door, they see a frightened boy, Joey's brother Poe, sitting on the floor. When the child learns that they are leaving this house, he happily throws himself into the arms of his older brother. Joy informs his brother that they are leaving their father and tells Po to say hello to the princess. Dorothy smiles affectionately at the emaciated boy who looks at her with big green eyes. At that moment, screams are heard. Po rushes to her older brother in fright, and Dorothy turns to scream. A battered, toothless man stands in the doorway, yelling at Stefan and demanding that the intruders get out of his house. Dorothea is angry at a man who is going to sell his children to the mine, and she reveals that she is taking them with her. Grabbing Joey's arm, she hurriedly leads them with her, away from this bastard. Returning to the estate, Dorothy ordered the children to be washed and changed. The princess reminds the rejoicing children that she has bought them out, and in return for paying the debt, they must work for her. She states that they should follow her, as she has a job for them. The boys are brought to the dining room, where a rich table decorated with flowers is laid. The children stand as if rooted to the spot, because they see such splendor for the first time in their lives, and the princess orders them to sit down. A variety of dishes are brought to the table from which the boys' eyes run wild. Dorothea plans to teach them feast etiquette so that Joy and Po can serve her. Joy is a little scared. He doesn't know what to expect from the princess, because she may turn out to be just like Count Duncan and make him do the hard work. However, looking closely at Dorothea's calm face, he still decides that she is kind. Smiling, Joy tells the princess about her favorite dish, apple pie, and promises to give it to her someday as a token of gratitude. Returning to the study of etiquette, the children eat everything that was on their plates and thank the princess. Suddenly, the door to the dining room opens, and a servant brings in dessert under a silver quiche. It turned out to be an apple pie, which the princess asked to bring to the children for their efforts in learning etiquette. However, Joy is upset, both embarrassed by Dorothy's kindness and upset that he wanted to give her the cake first. The princess calms him down and tells him that the people who work for her must be neat and healthy, so now their task is to eat well and become healthier. Dorothea wrote about all this in her letter to Theon, reading which he smiles at her kindness. He sits down at the table and stretches out his hand to the ink to answer the letter as quickly as possible. However, the hand does not obey. It trembles, the heart beats furiously, and the body ceases to obey Theon. He is frightened, not understanding what is wrong with him. Eden has come to visit the princess, and Clara sees him off to the whispers of the maids who are touched by his beauty. As he walks down the hallway, he hears Dorothea's voice scolding someone for a pie hidden in the room. Opening the door, Eden sees Dorothea taking away a moldy pie from two boys, which they regret throwing away. After learning from Clara where these children came from, Eden greets the princess and admires her action. Dorothea leaves the room, and Joy and Po are left alone with him, recognizing him because he was present at the swordsman's competition. The boys talk about Dorothea's kindness and how they study letters and history in the castle. Eden expresses his displeasure that the children have molested the princess like parasites. Joy claims that he is not one to sit still, he just does not know how exactly he can thank Dorothy. Good-naturedly placing his hand on the boy's shoulder, Eden shares an idea that has come to him in this regard. Dorothea is sitting in the guest room drinking tea with Eden when an embarrassed Joy and Po appear on the doorstep. They pull out a basket of berries from behind their backs, which they picked to please the princess. The girl is embarrassed to accept the gift. After all, she did not force the boys to work, but she is pleased that they took care of her. Suddenly, Dorothy notices that the basket is lined with Theon's handkerchief, which is smeared with berry juice. The princess is angry. She scolds the boys for taking someone else's thing without asking, because this handkerchief means so much to her. In fear, Po begins to cry and tells Dorothea that it was Eden's idea to bring her sweets. Joy is angry because it was Eden who told him to put something under the berries, but he claims that he didn't think they would take Dorothy's thing. The princess asks the boys to come out for a while, and as she leaves, Joy throws an angry glance at a grinning Eden. However, as soon as the door slams shut, Dorothea slaps Eden in the face. She looks him straight in the eye and perfectly understands what really happened. Eden makes a surprised face, but Dorothy suddenly realizes that they are both the same as before. She was going to change Eden in the right direction, but she can't even control herself. Before his rebirth, he had a hobby of throwing his belongings secretly and enjoying the supremacy when noble ladies bowed down to him to pick up the dropped item. Among them were those who kept his handkerchiefs, and he, watching this, laughed at them. Dorothea was the first to learn of his infatuation, and it was the beginning of their common sin. Their malice was too closely intertwined, of the tyrant who ascended the throne and her right hand that pushed her to do so. All this then took root and eventually bore fruit, leading to the murder of Raymond. She tried to convince her friend Theon, who was crying over the corpse, that she was now the Empress. She convinced him that he would now sit on the throne next to the Empress. However, people were opposed to the fact that a person who did not control the spirit and killed his loved ones would be on the throne. She killed everyone who opposed her, but contrary to expectations, Theon declared her madness. Since the day Raymond was murdered, she had been tormented by insomnia every day. She worried that people continued to hate her. However, Eden, who was always there, convinced her that people were mired in prejudice. Theon turned away from Dorothea, but Eden swore that he would always be there to take care of her. Theon continued to correspond with Julia, and his face always lit up with a smile when he received a new letter. Dorothea was trembling with anger, for she had so much more than Julia, but Theon never smiled at her. She even decided to build a new palace for Theon to earn his favor. However, this did not help. Dorothea learned that Theon thought she was pathetic and terrible. She was then so angry that, deciding that only her jewelry was beautiful in her, she tore the earring out of anger, tearing her ear open. Eden arrived in horror and saw the bleeding ear and hurried to Dorothea's aid. At that moment, it was reported that Theon wanted to see the Empress, and she turned around with the hope that he had finally come to her with love. However, Theon was angry. He learned that Dorothea had revoked the title of the de Levingen family and forbade them to appear in the capital. Dorothea begged her husband to stop being interested in Julia, and Eden watched the scene in silence. Hearing from the furious Theon how much Julia meant to him, Dorothea slapped him in the face. Stating that he had never sworn that he would belong to her, Theon turned and walked out, and Dorothy rushed after him. However, Eden stopped her, convincing her that this would only hurt her husband's feelings, and she needed to wait a little. Holding Dorothea close to him, he promised that one day everything she wanted would come into her arms. The Empress gave Theon everything she had, but the more she gave, the stronger his indifference became. One day, when Dorothea was once again pondering how to conquer Theon, Eden came to her. He arrived to report that Julia was dead, having had an accident when she was wandering alone without a guard. Dorothea thought that perhaps it was Eden who had killed Julia for her, but she did not care. She was already rushing to Theon, because now there was no barrier between them. The Empress found her husband in the garden. He lowered his head and held a dead bird in his hands. With tears in his eyes, he turned to Dorothea and asked if she still loved him. Kneeling down in front of her husband, Dorothy replied that she continued to love him. Dorothea, with tears in her eyes, tried to convince Theon that she had nothing to do with Julia's murder. Grabbing the Empress's hands, Theon told her that his greed had ruined him. After a while, he committed suicide, and his shadow began to haunt Dorothea, and she could not do her work properly. In the end, the Empress, who had turned the country into chaos and killed a huge number of people, was sentenced to death. Before the execution, Adan approached Dorothea to ask her about her last words. Kneeling down before her, he wanted her to ask him for salvation. However, Dorothea refused because her life without Theon no longer had any meaning. Eden was furious. He could not understand what was it about Theon that even in the face of death, the Empress could not forget about him. Dorothea only smiled and asked Eden to become a good hero, because all this time she had only managed to play the role of a villain. Looking at her silently, Eden pulled out a crystal from his rod and handed it to the Empress, but she turned away. The next moment, an axe flashed over Dorothea's head, and the Empress was beheaded. She died with the thought that no one in the whole world loved her, and if she had known that it would turn out, she would have ended it all sooner. Now Dorothea stands with her fist clenched, trembling, and does not understand why all these memories have come to her now. However, one thing she knows for sure is that she and Eden are very similar, so they can only make each other worse. Being near Eden, Dorothea is afraid of succumbing to greed again and taking the path of evil. Eden apologizes for his wrongness and hugs the princess tightly, preventing her from leaving. He asks her to stop crying, but tears flow from his eyes. Dorothea pushes him away. She thinks that apologies are also a mask, because in a past life he never apologized. Eden regrets what he did because he did it out of jealousy, wanting to be the only friend of the princess. He is afraid that if Dorothea is friends with others, he will be left alone, but the princess does not know how much to believe his words. The Emperor is informed of the successful visit of the delegation from Hark to Saritian and how impressed they were by the princess. The speaker also reports on Dorothea's success in fighting the infection, on charitable donations, and on the development of her mind. The emperor learns that the princess has already recovered enough and has even taken part in a fencing competition. Karnan orders Dorothea to be returned to the palace and decides to send her to the entrance exams to the epistemia. He believes that the exam will allow you to understand whether the princess is really as smart as they say she is. Stefan sits in the garden, polishing his sword and thinking about the years he spent in Seritiana next to the princess. He remembers his first meeting with Dorothy, when he, along with the other knights, discovered her in the desert. When she met the princess again on the estate, she did not recognize him, but he distinctly remembered how her thin hands clung to him in the desert. Therefore, when they officially met, he did not dare to shake her hands, fearing that these thin palms would break from shaking hands. When the princess first asked to teach her how to use a sword, Stefan was delighted, because now he was not practicing alone. In addition, when the knight saw how well the princess studied, he understood what the joy of mentoring is. Stephen considered Dorothea a smart, tenacious, strong girl, as if blessed by God, whom one could not help loving. However, one day the princess told him about her nightmares, and Stefan realized that this girl's fate would never be worthy of love, since she was born by killing her own mother. Empress Alice died of blood loss while giving birth to Dorothy. The doctor was barely able to save the child, dying in a sea of blood, but it is said that in the end he was beheaded. Stefan does not understand who could have told Dorothy about this, who did not need to know about everything, because now she is tormented by guilt. The knight regrets that he is not as sweet and open as Clara, and it is difficult for him to say words of support to the princess. Suddenly, a rustle is heard behind the bushes. Stefan gets up and sees Joey falling down from fright. The boy sits down next to him and asks about how Stefan became a knight. Joy would also like to become a knight, but he believes that he will not succeed because he does not come from a noble family. Stephen listens to the boy sadly, thinking about something of his own, and asks him if he really wants to become a knight. Joy enthusiastically convinces Stefan of his wish, because he believes that it is cooler to die fighting the enemy than from working in the mine. In addition, the boy believes that if he becomes a knight, he will be able to repay the princess because she saved him. And so Stefan already tells Dorothea about his desire to teach Joy and asks for her permission. Having received her consent, Stefan asks the princess if she will continue fencing. However, Dorothy believes that it is dangerous for her to become stronger, because holding a sword in her hands, she is overcome by the desire to win and capture. Clenching her fists and not looking into Stefan's eyes, she refuses to continue her studies under the pretext that she is bored. The knight sadly sees off the girl, who hastily left the room. The chef scolds Poe for hanging around the kitchen because if the boy is hungry, he only has to ask. However, Poe is not hungry. He wants something else. However, he is too shy and embarrassed to ask. The chef leans over the boy to whisper his idea in his ear. The boss praises the joyful Poe for what he said and promises to help him as long as necessary. Eden lies in his room on the bed and cries, saddened that the princess is angry with him and refuses to see him. He wants to do something that can please Dorothy, and suddenly a beautiful idea dawns on him. Seritiana has flowers that shine in the night, but there are no flowers elsewhere, and people often come to find them. Eden decides to go in search of flowers. It is already getting dark, and he regrets that he did not take a servant with him. However, he dismisses these thoughts because he must do it only on his own, so that the princess rejoices only thanks to him. And finally, Eden finds a flower. It grows on a rocky, steep mountainside. Clutching Theon's handkerchief in her hand, Dorothy thinks that despite Eden's apologies, she does not want to see him yet. There is a knock at the door, and Clara appears on the threshold with the servant of the Bronte family, who is looking for the boy. Dorothy learns that he went in search of a flower for her and has never returned. Aiden climbs the cliff, clinging to the sharp rocks, and now he is almost there. Making the last jerk, he grabs the stems and pulls out the flowers, admiring them with a mesmerized look. Suddenly, the sole of his boot slips, and before he knows it, Eden is flying down the cliff. Worried, Dorothea, accompanied by Stefan, goes into the forest in search of Eden, constantly shouting his name. There is absolute darkness all around, and suddenly the princess sees some kind of glow in the distance behind the bushes. Coming closer and parting the bushes, she sees Eden sitting on the ground, wiping away tears with one hand and holding flowers in the other. When he sees Dorothy, he turns away from her because he does not want to appear so dirty and ugly. The princess cleans Eden's face from dirt with her sleeve. She realizes that because of the past, she did not look at him at all in the present. It doesn't matter to her what he looks like now, because for her sake, he went in search of the flower, risking his life. Dorothea weaves a flower into her hair. She realizes that the beauty of Eden's soul is important to her, not how he looks. She attaches the second bud to the boy's ear and happily thanks him for the gift. Joy and Poe had avoided Dorothy for the past few days, and as soon as they met their eyes, they flinched and ran away. And then the princesses knock on the door of the room. Joy and Poe are standing on the threshold, who is holding a plate with a piece of apple pie. As an apology for his behavior, Joy, as promised, gives the princess a pie that the cook helped the brothers to make. Dorothy is delighted with the pie because no food has ever brought her so much pleasure as the one that was prepared with her in mind. She thanks the boys. They jump with happiness because they managed to please the princess, and at that moment someone comes in. Turning, Dorothea sees an imperial knight who has arrived to give her an order from Karnan. The princess is informed of the emperor's order to return to the capital as her health has already been restored. Out of anger, Dorothy even drops the pie from her hands because everyone who cares about her is in Ceritiana. The princess tells the emperor that she will stay at the estate until Joy and Poe bake her a new cake. Raymond runs silently after Tian walking down the corridor and happily falls on his shoulders. Out of surprise, the boy pushes the attacker away in a big way, not immediately recognizing him as a friend. Ray notices that Theon's hands are shaking violently. He is concerned about his condition because the boy even missed a history lesson. Julia appears in the hallway, calling out to Theon, and the two of them leave to talk alone. Ray sees that something is happening to his friend, but hopes that there is nothing serious about it, and Theon will soon tell everything himself. Sitting over a cup of tea, Julia notices that Theon looks particularly tired today. He tells her about how he went for a walk at dawn, but suddenly his eyes darkened, and the bird he was looking at died. Grabbing himself by the hair, he realized his guilt and that it was he who killed the bird unwittingly. Theon clutches at his hair again, a shiver pierces his body again, and Julia rushes to him. He apologizes, calms down, and shares his anxiety with Julia, not understanding where he got his strength from. At some point, strange symptoms began to appear, and at first it was just a light trembling in the dark. But gradually, this power of the spirit of darkness became more and began to kill first small bugs, and now even a small bird. In the Fried family, who had a contract with the spirits of darkness, no one had received this power for almost 100 years, and now, feeling her awakening, Theon is afraid of harming any of the people. Julia calms him down because generations have changed and the blood of the Freed family has been greatly diluted, so Theon will not become strong enough to harm a person. Julia advises him to tell Ray as well, as he can control the spirit of light and may be able to help Theon. But he had already asked Ray about the power and learned that the prince had communicated with the spirit from the very beginning. But with Theon, everything was different. The spirit appeared, did what it wanted, and disappeared. In addition, in order to control the spirit, you need a high degree of intimacy with it, and Theon does not have this. The boy remembers that the power entered him when he was about to write a letter to Dorothy. He hopes that he will learn to control the power until the next meeting with the princess. Clara informs Dorothea of a letter of invitation to a meeting at Countess Duncan's salon. The princess also learns that this time someone will have a debut in high society. At dinner, the Duke of Bronte reflected on the fact that Princess Dorothea was taking a great interest in his illegitimate son. He knows that the princess has refused to visit other nobles her age, but she often spends time with Eden. The Duke considers it a good chance if there is a scandal between his son with an unfortunate origin and the princess. He orders the maid to urgently call the Duchess to share his thoughts with her. After all, an illegitimate son and a princess unwanted by his father can become a wonderful couple. Without waiting for the arrival of the Duchess, the angry Duke himself goes to the room for her. Upon learning that her husband is planning to bring Eden to high society because Princess Dorothea is interested in him, the Duchess is beside herself with rage. She is ashamed that the Duke decided to trumpet to the whole world that he slept with a woman from a bar, made her a child, and now he is raising him. She assures that she has always treated the boy no worse than her son, and by allowing him to be taken away, she has already paid him all the moral debt, and she does not agree to more. Bronte believes that Eden is old enough to face the world, and he assumes that the Duchess fears for Jonathan's place. The Duchess is sure that she will be ashamed to look people in the face if she brings out a child conceived by her husband with another woman. She informs her husband that she thinks Eden is very cute, but she will never be able to love this child. At this moment, the clink of a cup that has broken on the floor is heard, which was dropped from the hands of Eden, who accidentally witnessed the scandal. The boy freezes for a moment and then runs away from the room as fast as he can, not stopping at his father's call. Entering his son's room, the Duke finds him in tears. The boy is annoyed that his parents are embarrassed by him. Bronte tries to change Eden's mind, who does not understand why he is being hidden and cursed because of him. He thinks that it is all the fault that he disappointed his parents and did not enter the epistemia. He begged the Duchess to take him to the exam so much that she gave up, but there was an accident on the way and they never arrived. Eden believes that he is not to blame for his mother's low origins, so he does not understand why he is being scolded. The Duke assures the boy that he is innocent and promises to officially introduce him as his son at a reception with the Countess of Duncan. The boy knows that his father and the Duchess sincerely care about him, and the man understands that he paid little attention to this precocious child. Princess Dorothea enters the Countess's estate, and everyone immediately showers her with so many compliments that she already regrets that she came. She is distracted from the noisy ladies by the Duke of Bronte, who has come up to greet and pay his respects. Suddenly, Eden comes out from behind him. The princess is dumbfounded by his appearance. She is surprised because before her reincarnation, Eden first appeared in high society only after Jonathan, who died during a hunt. Dorothea does not understand what kind of spiritual change has happened to the Duke of Bronte, because until then, they have constantly hidden him. The princess is happy with Eden's debut and sincerely congratulates him on his first outing. The boy was relieved to meet Dorothea there, for he was anxious, not knowing how to behave among strangers. The princess is sure that Eden will quickly get used to it, but the father calls the boy to the beginning of the event. Eden kisses the princess's hand and apologizes to her for having to leave her. Standing in the midst of the crowd, Dorothea hears the ladies whispering, reproaching the Duke and admiring the generosity of Madame Bronte. But Dorothy knows that soon everyone will go crazy with the desire to approach him, because in a past life his influence in high society was enormous. So much so that depending on whether Eden came to the ball, the number of visitors changed significantly, and this became his power. Countess Duncan learns of the musician's injury, as a result of which he will not be able to perform and fears that there is no one to replace him. Eden, who accidentally witnessed the conversation, offers the Countess his candidacy for the role of pianist. The boy apologizes for his tactlessness and introduces himself as the youngest son of the Bronte family. The Countess laughs and asks Eden if he can perform Beethoven, because it is difficult for an ordinary person to play this composition. Eden assures that he rehearsed this composition every day and asks Mrs. Duncan to give him a chance. Dorothea drinks her juice with boredom and thinks about where Eden has gone. Suddenly, the hubbub of the crowd subsides, and, turning around, the princess sees Eden sitting at the piano. The song fascinates the girl. It seems to her that Eden is playing it as if she wants her to hear it. Dorothea thinks that perhaps if Eden had become a musician instead of a minister, he would have been happier, but he was very ambitious. Those present applaud the young talent, and he, finding the princess in the crowd, enthusiastically waves to her. Dorothea goes out onto the balcony to be quiet, but she hears the ladies gossiping about Eden waving to the princess. She is outraged that people are meddling in their own business, discussing how they are the perfect match with him, and at that moment Eden approaches her. Dorothy is sure that there is nothing good in their words, because their couple is ideal because the abandoned Milaneo and the illegitimate Bronte are two natural geniuses who cannot shine brightly. Now the ladies whisper over the princess's inability to summon the spirit and prophesy the end of the imperial palace. Suddenly, from somewhere on the balcony, a bright red juice sticky with sweetness pours onto one of the ladies. Looking up, they see Eden Bronte, who apologizes for accidentally knocking over a glass while trying to put it on the railing. Eden states that the Frieds have not been able to summon the spirit of darkness for over 100 years, but they still hold the power, which means that if someone from Milaneo cannot summon the spirits, it will not cause the empire to fall. Clenching her fists, Dorothea asks Eden to stop because she believes that Milaneo, who does not see spirits, is not Milaneo. Bowing, the ladies make excuses that they only feel sorry for the princess because she was left in Cerishion and has not been summoned to the palace for several years. The princess leaves, assuring the ladies that there is no need to feel sorry for her, because she is so unhappy that someone's heart aches for her. Eden tosses the glass to the ground, a few steps away from the gossips from high society, and follows the princess. Dorothea wants to return to a place where there are people who care about her: Stefan, Clara, Joy, and Poe. However, her path is blocked by a knight who appears out of nowhere, announcing the arrival of the imperial carriage. He reads Karnan's order, which says that the princess has already recovered her health, and in this regard, she must return. Dorothy realizes that if she refuses, she will be yoke again, so she asks for at least time to prepare. The knight must carry out the order without delay, but Dorothy asks him to at least say goodbye to her. The princess realizes that everyone she cares about except Clara will remain in Siriziana. She is worried about Joey and Poe. Dorothea asks to be given a couple of minutes to write letters for Clara and the boys. Eden enters the room and offers the princess to deliver the letter to the castle in person. The boy asks Dorothy not to worry, because he will properly fulfill everything that she entrusts him with. The princess thinks that Eden won't do bad things again this time, and asks him to give the letter to Clara. Eden congratulates the princess on her return to Lampas and asks her not to say goodbye, as if they were seeing each other for the last time. Coming closer and smiling, Dorothy promises that they will definitely meet again. Eden reminds her of the debutante ball, where he will be her partner, and until then he promises to wait only for this day. Preventing Dorothy from leaving, Eden pulls her in, hugs her tightly, and kisses her forehead goodbye. Raymond is concerned that Theon is hiding something from him. He thinks his friend has fallen in love with Julia and they left him alone. With these thoughts, he walks down the corridor, and suddenly through the open door, he hears the sound of broken glass. Ray opens the door and sees Theon sitting on the floor, trembling and looking very exhausted. The prince rushes to his friend, who asks the prince to help him learn how to handle the spirit as he wishes. Dorothea arrived at the castle for the first time in 3 years, but nothing had changed, neither the castle nor Karnan. The emperor believes that it is time for the girl to return to the castle, but Dorothea sees no reason to be there. Karnan promises to change her mind about her daughter if she passes the entrance exams to the epistemia. In the past, Dorothy would have been happy with these words and began to study hard, but now she does not see the point in it and refuses. Enraged, the emperor did not plan to give Dorothy a choice. He orders her to take her exams. The princess agrees to go to the exam, but refuses the teacher offered by the emperor. Lying in her room, Dorothea thinks about how important it was for her to know all the topics of the exam by heart before, and how it is all the same now. A bored Raymond flies into the room and rushes to his sister, and she, as usual, pushes him away. The prince presents Dorothy with a bouquet of flowers as a welcome gift. Ray is excited that his sister will enter the epistemia. He is looking forward to going there with her and introducing her to friends. Dorothy again reproaches her brother for having come to talk to her about nonsense instead of studying. Clara is horrified by how the princess is suddenly summoned to the capital. She clutches her head and rushes around the house, collecting her belongings. Upon learning that Dorothy is leaving, Joy and Poe are upset that they will now have to return home to their father. Burying his face in his older brother's chest, Poe cries as he doesn't want to go back. In this fuss, they are all caught by Eden, who has arrived to fulfill the princess's request. He gives the letter to Clara, who, after reading it, admires the resourcefulness and kindness of the princess. The boys learn that Dorothea ordered them to go to Lampas with Clara. Clenching his hands in envy, Eden says goodbye, refusing Clara's offer to linger for sweets. The boy leaves, but Joy and Poe catch up with him in the hallway, thanking him for the letter and apologizing for being angry with him. Noting the luck of the boys, Eden orders them to try not to shame the princess and leaves. A month later, Dorothea is standing in Karnan's office among the exam forms scattered all over the floor. The emperor is furious that the princess scored 0 points, a score that no one has ever had before in the history of epistemia. Dorothea assures her father that she did everything possible because she set a record that had never happened before. She reproaches the emperor for the fact that the death of his wife was more important to him than the birth of a daughter, and in her entire life she did not receive a single gift from him. Unable to stand the princess's suggestion that he wishes his daughter had died instead of his wife, Karnan yelled at her. Dorothea asks the emperor if he wanted her to die when she was kidnapped a few years ago, and receives a resounding slap in the face for this question. The princess accuses him of never hugging her because he doesn't consider her his child. She asks not to be called Princess Milaneo in the future, because this name does not give her blessing. Before bowing out, Dorothy also asks not to invite her to events and ceremonies. The girl leaves the room, glad that it turned out this way, because now even the remaining small affection of her father for her is gone. Stefan runs up to Dorothea, who is horrified to notice the redness on her cheek, but she assures her that everything is fine. However, the next moment the girl bursts into bitter tears. She no longer wants to stay in the capital and wants to return to the castle by the sea. Stefan hugs and tightly hugs Dorothy, who, bursting into tears, wants to disappear from this world, and now she is already crying on his shoulders, asking him to take her away from here. With eyes swollen with tears, with a mark from a slap in the face, the princess, smiling, thanks Stefan for being there. The knight smiles and strokes the girl's head, and she is already much calmer in her heart. On the way, they meet Theon, who calls out to the princess and starts a conversation with her. Dorothea feels uncomfortable because once again she appears in front of Theon in the form in which she does not want to show herself. After listening to Dorothy's assurances that she is fine, he takes a tube of medicine from his pocket and advises her to apply it to her cheek. The princess takes the medicine, thanks Theon for his help, and saying goodbye, leaves. Looking after her, the boy wonders who could have hit Dorothy and, worried about her, decides to ask. However, the power of darkness reappears, and Theon's entire body trembles, and he decides to be careful when meeting people. Dorothy looks at the medicine Theon has given, but she thinks of Eden. She is thinking of writing him a letter and telling him what happened, because Eden has always listened carefully to her stories as a very close friend. Dorothea takes a mahogany box in her hands and admires the contents. She decides to include a bookmark in the letter, which she made from a flower that Eden gave her to make him happy. The princess thinks of writing about a miserable, lonely existence in the palace, or that the only parent wants her dead. Thinking that it is useless, she changes her mind and slams the box shut. Eden squats in the garden, saddened by the lack of news from the princess. He is jealous of the guys who went to her in Lampas because he already misses Dorothy so much. Remembering the words of the princess, Karnan thinks that he would never prefer her death because what father wants his daughter to die at the hands of kidnappers? In fact, however, if Alice could have been saved on the day Dorothy was born, at the cost of the girl's life, he would have agreed. Every time Karnan looks at his daughter, he remembers how his wife died in his arms, and he can't be affectionate. He thinks about how frighteningly similar Dorothy is to her mother, and that he might have some feelings for her. However, the girl cannot summon spirits, and this endangers the imperial family. The emperor is saddened that the child Alice gave birth to at the cost of her life is unable to summon a single spirit. Raymond is very upset to learn that Dorothea has failed the academy exam. He tells Theon that she received the lowest grade, 0 points on the test. The boy is sure that the princess failed the exam not out of stupidity, but on the contrary, from a great mind, having done it on purpose. Theon shares the news with a friend that he is managing to suppress his power, and now he is less worried that he might harm someone. However, Raymond is concerned that if Theon continues to suppress the spirit of darkness, it could hurt him. The spirit of darkness is associated with death, and the more Theon suppresses it, the less vitality it has. Raymond found old books in the Imperial Library and studied some facts. He shows Theon the story of how the first Milaneo and the first Freed made a bloody contract with the Spirit King. Milaneo created the sun by making a wish for the spirit of light, and Freed signed the spirit of darkness by throwing a curtain to escape from the sun. After learning that light and darkness were one, and that families balanced each other to stabilize the forces, Ray offers Theon help. The prince promises to find out how they can stabilize their powers so that the spirit of light will suppress the spirit of darkness. Loaded with boxes and belongings, Clara hurries to the princess, as the move has taken longer than she expected. Not noticing Stefan appearing on the way, the maid crashes into him, drops the boxes, and finds herself in the knight's arms. Dorothy goes out to meet them, upset that she didn't have time to prepare for their arrival. Clara rushes to hug the princess, notices a mark on her cheek, and suggests that she apply the medicine as soon as possible. Joy and Poe are also concerned about Dorothea's appearance, and they vie with each other to ask what happened to her. And then the girl realizes that it was not about returning to Cerishian, but about the people who take care of her. She greets them happily because her home is now where these people are. All of them, together with Stefan, rush to hug the princess. She is happy because she is again surrounded by dear people. Sitting over a cup of tea, Dorothy thinks about how good it is that everyone has come, because she's uncomfortable being around Karnan. Joy and Poe approach her to find out how they can be useful, and Dorothy orders them to live as before, only not to go to other palaces and do more etiquette. Theon enters the room, and Raymond, who has come to support his sister as he is concerned about her mood lately. Theon compliments Dorothy, and she finds herself fading from his friendliness to the memory of his death. Raymond notices the boys standing aside and asks his sister who they are. The boys tremble at the fact that the Crown Prince talks to them, but Ray treats them with a simplicity uncharacteristic of a prince. Dorothy realizes that maybe it's not so bad, because she's always been jealous of his brightness and how much everyone loves him. Dorothea is already 16 years old. She is walking in the garden, and suddenly she hears that Clara is calling her. Out of breath, the maid runs up to the princess to inform her to ask her for a few days of leave. As it turned out, Clara's father, who had been ill in recent years, died that morning. Dorothy sympathizes with the maid and regrets that she didn't know about it earlier to give her more time to spend with her ailing father. Clara is touched by her mistress's understanding and kindness, but Dorothy does not think so, because she knows nothing about her maid's life. The princess orders someone to be sent to help Clara organize the funeral and a wreath on Dorothea's behalf. However, she learns that only famous nobles are supposed to send a wreath from the imperial family. Dorothy orders the wreath to be sent anyway and plans to appear at the funeral in person, to be there for Clara, who has taken care of her all these years. Dorothea is not afraid of the prospect of appearing on the street where commoners live, because she cannot leave an important person for her at a difficult moment. Clara thinks about how much she needs to prepare for tomorrow's funeral. She is distracted from work by an unexpected knock on the door. She is surprised because she is not waiting for anyone. Clara opens the door and sees Stefan on the doorstep, who has come to help her. Those gathered in the mourning hall whisper about the wreath sent on behalf of the imperial family. Clara stands in the hall and thanks Stefan for his help, because thanks to the princess, the funeral was easy. She learns from the knight that he volunteered to help her because he was worried about her when he heard her cry. An imperial carriage drives up to the funeral hall, and the princess appears, dressed in mourning dress. Dorothy apologizes for arriving late, but Clara is so moved that she doesn't know how to thank the princess. She hugs the girl tightly and promises that she will live with her for the rest of her life. After the funeral, the delegation went to Clara's house for tea. Dorothea learns that her maid has an older brother, but he is not in a position to receive guests. At that moment, the door to the next room opens and Clara's brother, Anton, appears on the threshold in a wheelchair. He introduces himself and apologizes to the princess for the inconvenience. Anton thanks Dorothea for her condolences and for the way she cares for his sister. The princess claims that she considers Clara her family, because the family is not just people connected by blood, but someone dearer. Embarrassed, Clara leaves the living room to prepare a new portion of tea. Anton thanks the princess for loving his sister with all her heart and seeing her true character. He talks about his illness, because of which he cannot work, because he knows how to sew, but people do not buy things made by cripples. Having learned about Anton's sewing abilities, Dorothea thinks about how to help him. Meanwhile, Clara sits sad and embarrassed in the courtyard, clasping her knees. Stefan comes out to her to ask if she is okay. As it turned out, Clara did not want to introduce her brother to Stefan and the princess, since everyone had neglected him until now. Clara is ashamed. It seems to her that she deceived Dorothy, because she does not consider herself good. With tears in her eyes, she tells how tired she was of her sick father and brother, and did not want to return home from the castle. Stefan silently hugs Clara and hugs her to calm her down. He understands that it was hard for the girl to bear this burden alone, and there is nothing to reproach her for. The knight talks about Clara's kindness, which the princess saw, and the girl feels relieved in his arms. Saying goodbye to the servant, Dorothea asks her to contact Stephen if she needs help. The princess says that she will be busy for a while, as she has important business to attend to. Sitting in her office, Dorothea is hard at work on a plan to create a support center for the disabled. She dreams of creating a program to provide funds for treatment and regular medical care. Dorothy also wants to create a community where people with similar problems can communicate, but this requires the permission of the emperor. The princess recalls how she planned to create such a center even before her rebirth, but the nobility took the idea negatively. People from the highest circles believed that it was necessary to invest in a business that could benefit the palace. Karnan also called the idea of the princess a useless exercise. He said that there is no use for talentless people. Dorothea did not understand how it was possible to treat others badly just because they were not profitable. Then she thinks that if she had power, no one would dare to look down on her. These thoughts frighten Dorothea because she promised herself not to want much, and she continues to do it herself. Upset that nothing has changed and feeling hopeless, the girl gets up from the table. Ray enters the room and, noticing Dorothy's papers, asks for permission to see her plan. After reading his sister's work, the prince is delighted. He wants to analyze and start implementing the plan. Dorothea believes that most likely she will not succeed, because for this she needs the permission of the emperor. Raymond offers to help his sister. He promises to talk to his father because it is difficult for Dorothy to do this. The princess believes that the emperor can listen to Ray and wants to try, for the sake of Clara and Anton. Raymond promises to talk to the emperor because he is ready to fulfill any request of his sister. However, in return, he has a condition. Dorothea must thank him and hug him. The princess refuses, but Ray does not back down. He does not understand why Dorothy cannot hug him at least once. Raymond lies upset face down on the floor, hurt that his sister has never done this and has not loved him since he was 1 year old. Dorothy recalls how after her rebirth, she was annoyed when her brother took her in his arms. She doesn't understand why her hug is so important to Ray and what it means to him. He believes that this is an agreement to take another step towards a relationship in which they will understand each other a little more. When she asks her to fulfill some other request from her brother, Ray asks her to kiss her on the cheek. Dorothy agrees, but promises to comply with the request only after the prince receives the emperor's permission. Hoping that the princess's heart has opened up for him a little more, Ray heads to her father's office. On the way, he stops at the portrait of his mother, and the very first memory pops up in his head: his deceased mother in a coffin and his father looking at her. Instead of his mother, his younger sister came into this world, a special child, Dorothea Milaneo. Raymond hugged her, afraid of losing someone close to her, and promised to always protect his little sister. Looking at the portrait of his mother, the prince promises that he will take care of Dorothy and do everything possible for this. After reviewing the papers, the emperor wonders why Raymond decided to spend the imperial budget on such a minor matter as helping the disabled. He considers such waste to be excessive, but Ray argues that it is very important. The emperor demands that the prince not succumb to trifles and always think about profit, because the most important thing is the prosperity of the empire. Ray insists that the prosperity of the people is the prosperity of the empire. Without the people, there is no point in the existence of the emperor. Hearing the name of Dorothea, who is involved in this plan, Karnan is furious. He does not consider the girl to be part of the Milaneo family and thinks that she is against them. Raymond does not agree with his father because she is not like that at all. He accuses the emperor of not being interested in his daughter at all. Karnan remained silent, but he showed Ray that he would not rely on the girl's opinion to make a decision. The emperor claims that the name Milaneo is more weighty than it seems, and that it is not worth it for people to appear for a while and then disappear, because it is impossible to shine for everyone and always. It seems to Ray that the emperor does not understand that Dorothy is trying to create a world where everyone has equal rights and helps each other. The prince insists that he appealed to the emperor precisely because the name Milaneo has power. He claims that Dorothea made this plan because she knows that the family has power, money, and power that can help people. Raymond does not understand what is the point of the Milaneo family if they only seek power, but his father informs him about the critical situation in the family. The emperor is unhappy with Dorothea's inability to summon spirits, as this could lead to Milaneo's downfall. Ray does not like that his father thinks the princess is talentless and does not understand why he hates her so much. Karnan reminds her son of the freed family, who have lost the ability to communicate with spirits, and therefore the power is in the hands of Milaneo. However, due to Dorothy's lack of power, the imperial power is threatened, so the emperor advises Ray to take care of those who do not have flaws. The prince does not understand how it is possible to weigh human hearts on the scales, because they are all citizens of Ubera. Considering the conversation with his son to be over, the emperor turns around and leaves the room. Raymond is saddened that he will not be able to help people due to the fact that the Emperor relies only on the power of spirits. The prince went to Dorothea, not knowing how to tell her about the Emperor's refusal. He gives her bad news, but insists that the princess proceed with her plan anyway. He promises to take responsibility for this decision, but Dorothy considers it extravagance. Ray suggests that they pretend to have arbitrarily conveyed false permission from the Emperor. He also offers his sister his money, knowing that she does not have enough funds to implement the plan. Joking that he will not be kicked out for this since he is the only crown prince, Ray immediately regrets his words. Dorothy grabs him by the collar of his shirt and shakes him violently, not understanding why her brother is so desperately trying to help her. Taking her hands in his, the prince claims that he just likes to fulfill his sister's wishes. He wants her to reveal her talents and abilities and therefore helps her. Dorothea does not understand why Raymond loves her so much because he has every reason to hate his sister. She confesses her sin that she has always hated him because she was jealous. Dorothy wants the prince to ignore her, like Kernan and the other aristocrats. Ray, with a smile on her face, apologizes to her sister for not being able to hate her. He feels happy because Dorothy thinks she is bad only because she is jealous, which speaks of her kindness. Ray believes that truly bad people don't feel guilty no matter what happens, and they never feel remorseful. He is sure that Dorothea is not like that, and hugs his sister, who still hardly believes that she can be called kind. However, at some point her heart melts, and she clings tightly to her brother, apologizing and flooding his shoulder with bitter tears. Raymond is in a good mood, and Theon and Julia, noticing this, ask what happened to the prince. He talks about his tender feelings for his sister and how they are working together to create a support center. After witnessing a conversation between friends, Nereus Pons raises the idea of opening a center for the disabled to ridicule. He calls the project crazy, but Raymond, as usual, does not take his words to heart. Nereus believes that money should be invested wisely, and he is sure that the Emperor will never allow such stupidity. Pons believes that the prince should have been kicked out of Epistemia a long time ago because he does not study well and wastes time on useless ideas. Without losing his dignity, Ray thanks Nereus for taking care of other people's problems and hints to him not to meddle in other people's business. Pons reminds him that the imperial family is in decline, and Theon stands up for his friends. Nereus is reminded that he lost the battle to this very princess who has no connection to the spirits. Raymond, still smiling, advises Pons to mind his own business and the affairs of the Heart Kingdom. Leaving Nereus alone with his evil thoughts, Ray, Theon, and Julia leave the room. Dorothea discusses with Ray that it is necessary to change the perception of the people and stop discriminating against people with disabilities. Thinking about how to improve the opinion of people with disabilities, Ray comes up with an idea. A year later, the support center that Raymond and Dorothea have put so much effort into is finally established. They had many difficulties on the way, but by cooperating with Anton and the others, they managed to complete everything. Looking at her creation with pride, Dorothea thinks of Eden when an inspired Raymond approaches her. She thanks her brother because everything they have achieved has been achieved thanks to him. A year ago, the prince had a great idea, as a result of which their plans came true. As a sign of gratitude, Dorothy holds out her hand to Raymond because she appreciates his contribution to her dream work. Ray grabs her sister and hugs her tightly, ignoring the crowd around her. However, the prince is so proud that Dorothy is his sister that he does not care what they think of him. The princess realizes that Ray is one of those who believe in her beliefs to the very end and lovingly hugs her brother. Eden increasingly appears in high society and amazes everyone with his musical abilities. Everyone praises the guy so much that the Duke of Bronte even regrets that he did not bring him out earlier. Realizing that great hopes can be pinned on Eden, the Duke decides to offer his son to enter the Epistemia. He offers the guy to go to the entrance after his older brother. However, Eden, thanking his father for his care, refuses because now his interests have changed. In addition, Eden believes that while Jonathan is studying, his parents need a son who will help them in the absence of the elder. The Duke of Bronte is touched by his son's words. He says that he is very proud of him. Attending secular gatherings, Eden found out that the princess did not enter the Epistemia and even received the lowest score. Some aristocrats thought she was stupid, but Eden was amused by the princess's eccentricity because since she could mark all the wrong answers, it turns out that she knew all the correct options. Thinking of the princess, an involuntary smile appeared on the boy's face. He tried very hard and changed to become the one who would suit the princess. Raymond happily informs the princess that he made it to the top 50 students, ranking 49th on the list. Dorothea is ironic about his joy because this is not the best result for the crown prince. Theon, who took first place in this list, is pleased to notice how the princess has changed and how bright and joyful she has become. He plucks up the courage and suggests that Dorothea go to Phrygia this summer. Theon says that Phrygia is a very quiet place with a lake covered in fog. Dorothy recalls going there with him before her reincarnation, thinking that he would feel better when he was home. Theon is sure that if the princess goes to Phrygia, then this place will become happier. Dorothea does not understand why he is so kind to her in this life, where she has decided to give up her love, but agrees to the trip. Raymond happily leans on his friend, shaming him for not inviting him to join them. And so Dorothy goes to Phrygia, deciding that this will be a farewell trip in which she will forever abandon Theon. He and Raymond are fascinated by the fog that envelops the city, which was formed due to the pact with the spirit of darkness. Seeing the freed family's castle through the window, Dorothy thought that this place looked different now than in her previous life. She sets herself up to stop worrying and behave naturally. The carriage stops, the door opens, and Theon gives his hand to the princess to help her down. Having lowered Dorothea from the carriage, the guy happily greets the girl at his place. Theon's mother, Duchess Freed, greets the guests and notes that they are very lucky with the weather, because clear days are rare there. Dorothea thanks the Duchess for the reception and for the rooms prepared for her and her brother. Ray runs up and grabs the princess by the hand and drags her for a walk. Dorothea has been sitting on the shore for an hour, looking at the backs of the boys fishing by the lake. Ray rejoices at the fish he has caught, and showing it to his sister, offers to cook it for dinner. Dorothy looks at her brother with tenderness. She understands that she is ready to sit like this for a long time, since Ray is having so much fun. Suddenly, Julia comes up to the guys who has prepared a snack for her friends. Raymond brings Dorothy a bucket of her catch and jokes that he is ready to give up the throne to become a fisherman. While Julia tells everyone stories from Theon's childhood, the guy stretches out his hand to Dorothea and offers her to go fishing. The princess decides to allow herself to dream a little at the last meeting with Theon and holds out her hand in return. Raymond also wants to go fishing, but Julia insists that he eat first. Dorothy watches as Theon pulls out the garbage from the lake over and over again and becomes convinced that he doesn't really know how to fish. He says that he goes fishing only because he just likes this lake. Dorothy recalls that in a past life, she did not know that he liked this lake because he was constantly silent. Suddenly, Theon reports that fishing now is an opportunity to be alone with the princess. At that very moment, Dorothea has a fish so big that she is afraid that the line will break. Grabbing the girl from behind, Theon helps her pull out the fish caught on the hook. They lose their balance, and after a moment, Theon is on the ground and Dorothea falls from above. By chance, for a split second, their lips touch. The princess looks at Theon in surprise and fear. Stefan, who is nearby, runs in their direction, worried that the princess will not hurt herself. Dorothy assures her that she is fine and asks Stefan not to miss the huge fish. Theon and the princess sit on the ground near Vera with a catch and chat casually about fishing. Dorothy doesn't understand why he doesn't say anything about the kiss, and it seems as if he doesn't care. She thinks it was just an accident and refuses Eden's offer to continue fishing. Dorothea asks Stefan to accompany her, explaining that she needs some rest. The princess lies on the ground, looks at the sunset, and thinks about what a fool she is because she came to end her feelings. Theon is leaning over her, who wants to talk to the princess about something. He asks her why Dorothy agreed to his invitation, as he has always had the feeling that she is building an invisible wall between them. The princess assures Theon that her cold behavior is caused only by extreme prudence. Thinking about how she doesn't want a repeat of her past life, Dorothy says with a smile that she only wants happiness for him. Putting his hand on her shoulder, Theon admits that he also wants only happiness for the princess. However, she looks at him and remembers the past and how she ruined him then. Dorothea has tears in her eyes, and Theon does not understand why she is sad every time she hears such a thing from him. He approaches her, wipes the girl's eyes with his hand, and asks her to stop crying. Dorothy is hurt that Theon is so gentle with her, but she gathers her strength because he cannot spoil everything. The princess takes out of her pocket and hands Theon his handkerchief and a bottle of medicine. The guy does not understand why Dorothea returns these things to him because she can keep them for herself. Dorothea refuses and, looking at Theon, realizes that she is now ready to finally let him go. She did everything she couldn't do in her previous life, and now Theon sits in front of her, clutching his belongings in his hands and promising to keep them. Dorothea had thought that parting with Theon would be painful and that she would regret it, but it was not so. She stands on the balcony and looks at the night sky, and suddenly, fixing her gaze on the brightest star, she remembers the flowers from Eden. In the morning, the prince and princess, accompanied by Stefan, stroll through Phrygia before heading back to the castle. They are talking casually when someone asks them to turn around from behind. In front of them is a little girl who sells seashell jewelry that can only be found in Phrygia. It turns out that the girl makes jewelry herself, and each of them is made with love for a loved one. Dorothea buys jewelry and, approaching Stefan, asks him to lean towards her. The night descends to the girl, and she pins one of the jewelry she bought on his card. Dorothy has bought gifts for other people dear to her, and now she is happily going home. A year later, the graduation day of the epistemia comes, and everyone congratulates the prince on the completion of his studies. Dorothea comes to congratulate her brother on a bouquet of flowers that she has chosen especially for him. Raymond is deeply moved, but Dorothy is angry at him again for showing his feelings in public. The prince brags to his sister that he is graduating from epistemia, being already in 32nd place. And so the young man on the balcony asks for a minute of attention to announce the start of the graduation ceremony. Dorothea turns around and recognizes the graduate as Theon, noting to herself how he has grown since they did not see each other. The princess is happy to realize that after a trip to Phrygia, her unfulfilled love was able to become a good friend to her. A commotion begins in the crowd as everyone is looking for partners for the debutante ball. The Uber Debutante Ball was an event where the entire aristocratic society gathered and was held after graduation. Raymond asks her sister if she has chosen a partner, and Dorothy does not know what to say to him. She recalls how in a past life she could not find a partner and, standing alone, heard gossip behind her back. Then Theon stood up for her, declaring himself a partner of the princess, and never after that he gave the impression that he was forced to do so. Dorothy informs Ray that she can do without a partner, but he does not understand how it is possible to go to the ball without a gentleman. Nereus Ponce appears in front of them, who offers to accompany the princess. Dorothy, staring at the approaching man, does not want to rush with his decision and informs Nereus about it. However, he is sure that in her situation, the princess will not be able to find anyone better than him, so he came to the aid of the needy. At that moment, a familiar hand rests on Dorothea's shoulder, and she hears a familiar voice behind her. Putting his arm around Dorothy's shoulders, Eden informs her that the princess already has a partner for the evening. Eden leans over the girl and kisses her forehead. They haven't seen each other for a long time, and he missed her. He hopes that she remembers her promise because the princess did not write to him, and he was afraid that she had forgotten him. Dorothea hurries to convince Eden that she has not forgotten, and the guy again hugs the girl to him. Raymond, who caught this scene, angrily attacks Eden, pushing him away from Dorothy. Eden apologizes and introduces himself to the prince as the second son of the Duke of Bronte. Nereus is furious as some low and pathetic bastard takes his partner. He reproaches Eden for not even being a student and not having the right to be at the graduation. Nereus laughs at Eden, but Eden responds to all the sneers with dignified calm. He did not study at the academy and did not learn to attack people and exalt himself above others. Unable to restrain himself, Nereus angrily slaps Eden in the face, and Dorothea screams in fright. Raymond blocks Eden with his body. He assumes that Nereus is still angry at Dorothea for defeating him in the past. The prince kicks pawns out, and he, gritting his teeth, leaves, promising that there will be no next time. Dorothea worries about Eden's okay, as he has a slap mark on his cheek. The princess, under the pretext that she needs to talk to Eden, leads him away. But now they are awkwardly silent, waiting for the healer. Dorothea begins to talk about Nereus, but Eden interrupts her, as he wonders if she missed him. The princess thinks about the fact that she always remembered him, whether it was hard for her or joyful. Dorothea asks why he didn't write to her, and learns that Eden thought it wasn't time for him to get closer to her. She assures Eden that she still wants him to be her partner, and asks him the same. Pressing the princess's hand to his cheek, Eden confesses to Dorothy that from their first meeting until now, he wanted to be only with her. Dorothea used to be very fascinated by such words, but now she remembers some episodes from her past life. She remembers how in that life, Eden assured her that she had every right to get what she wanted, and only she could become empress. Dorothy pushes him away, stating that she knows what he is for, but she assures him that she is not as useful as he thinks. The princess believes that Eden chose her to get rid of his only complex for all his beauty and abilities, the status of the son of a mistress. Dorothea sees no point in a princess who is treated worse than a bastard, and therefore cannot give him what he wants. Taking the princess by the hand, Eden convinces her that there is no one more beautiful than her, and that she is talking nonsense. Dorothea believes that he is overestimating her and will definitely be disappointed in the future, so she pushes him away and leaves. However, Eden believes that it is not greed that speaks in the princess, but meta and hope, and she stops in surprise. Dorothy still can't understand why he's paying so much attention to her. In response, he only smiles and promises that soon she will understand everything herself. The Emperor had summoned Dorothy to him, but for half an hour he had been sitting silently, pretending to be busy. The princess sits, going over in her head all the possible reasons why Karnan called her to him for the first time since that day. Suddenly, a servant enters the room and has a wooden box in his hands. He opens the box and takes out a wine with Dorothea Milaneo's name on the label. The Emperor reminds Dorothy of how, as a child, she asked him to produce wine in her honor, and now her name is on 100,000 bottles of wine. Dorothea is angry that Karnan did not allocate money for her project, but spent it on 100,000 bottles, but clenches her fists and thanks him. The Emperor declares that Dorothea must dispose of the wine herself, and if she refuses, he will pour it into the rivers. The princess considers this a great waste. It seems to her that Karnan is testing her. However, he does not understand why he needs to check on her, because he just gave her a gift for her debutante ball. Dorothea sits in her room, replaying the meeting with the Emperor in her head, and thinks that he is behaving strangely. The princess tastes the wine, and the girl likes it so much that she feels sorry to give it to the aristocrats. Since it so happened, Dorothea decides to use wine for a good cause. She throws a case of wine to the knights in the Imperial Guard, who throw prickly jokes at the princess. Suddenly, Stefan appeared next to them from somewhere, who orders them to maintain respect for the surname Milaneo. Preparing for the debutante ball, Dorothy tells a surprised Clara that she gave all the bottles of wine to charity. The princess also gave wine to the knightly order and hopes that Stefan will like the gift, and also left it for Clara and her family. Clara believes that the princess chose too simple a dress for the debutante ball. To divert the subject from her dress, Dorothea asks the maid if there are feelings between her and Stefan. While Clara babbles something embarrassedly in her defense, Dorothea runs out of the room. The princess enters the hall, confident that no one will be interested in her appearance. However, all the curious glances of the assembled aristocrats are directed directly at her. Eden comes up to Dorothea and holds out his hand to her, and the girl is even a little worried about all this formality. From the sidelines, Theon silently watches the sweetly talking couple. Julia approaches the guy to see if he's okay, and he claims he's just worried. Theon admits that he is honored to be Julia's partner at the debutante ball. Dorothea walks through the hall with Theon, gossip about her simple dress behind her. Julia is sure that people slander out of jealousy, and if there was a late Ray, he would be very angry. The girl thinks that Dorothy and Eden look great, but Theon does not answer Julia, but only silently looks after the princess. The opening of the ball begins, and the Emperor appears in front of the audience and summons the Spirit of Light in front of everyone's eyes. This is the first time Eden has seen the Spirit of Light, but he is completely unimpressed by what he sees. It seems to him that there is nothing special in the spirit, although legends have been made about it. And although Dorothea understands that it is bad to speak of the gift like this, she is even a little glad that Eden called it something ordinary. The opening is complete, and she tries to escape from the annoying audience, which is trying to hurt her, reminding her of her inability to summon the Spirit of Light. However, Eden immediately arrives in time and assures everyone that the princess has such an ability, because she herself shines like the Spirit of Light. Stepping out onto the balcony, Dorothea thanks Eden for stepping in and standing up for her. The princess remarks that he now knows everything about her situation, and he must understand that she cannot give him anything. However, just as Eden is about to change her mind, she turns to Theon's familiar voice. Turning around, Dorothea sees the guy along with Julia, who have come to congratulate her on her debut. After thanking them, the girl catches herself on a strange feeling. She no longer feels dislike for Julia as before. Eden takes Dorothy's hand and asks Theon if he will go back to Phrygia, since he also graduated from the academy. However, Theon reveals that he plans to stay in Lampas as he still has a lot to learn. The debutante performance begins, and Eden, taking the princess by the hand again, leads her into the hall. Back at the celebration, Dorothea watches Eden dance and notes to herself that he does it very well, so everyone around steals a glance at him. Nereus watches him angrily because he believes that he should be the center of attention instead of the mudblood Eden. That is why Nereus crumples the carpet under his feet before the start of Princess Dorothea's dance in order to embarrass him and Eden. Approaching the princess, Aiden takes her by the hand to invite her to dance. The crowd disperses to make way for the couple, and they begin their dance. Dorothea has the feeling that she is flying because she becomes so calm next to Eden, and she understands that she cannot resist his charm. The guy admits that there are still things that he fails to do, for example, to win the heart of a princess. Eden notices the curled carpet and realizes that this is done on purpose to cause someone to trip and fall. Undeterred, he smoothly leads Dorothea away from there so that she does not stumble, and she also notices a fold on the carpet. The Emperor enters the hall and watches his daughter dance with Eden. At the same time, Julia is very concerned that Theon has become ill again. Eden asks Dorothea if she ever thought she wanted to control the spirit of light. Having received a positive answer, which he hoped for, the guy spins the princess even more in the dance, and suddenly the space around them is illuminated by sparks of light. Suddenly, the lights in the hall go out, and Dorothea is frightened by the memory of the same thing that happened in her past life. However, the sparks around the dancers are so strong that the entire hall is lit up with the spirit of light, and Dorothea does not understand what has happened. Continuing to dance around her, Eden tries to convince the princess that she is the real heir to the throne. He assures her that she is a suitable candidate to succeed the Empress, and the audience is impressed that the princess has managed to summon the spirit of light. Stepping out onto the balcony, Dorothea asks Eden to confess that the spirit of light is his doing. Touching her hair with his lips, he admits that he just wanted to show stupid people that she is worthy of the throne. The girl angrily pushes his hand away from her and asks Eden to stop. After all, during the dance, at some point, her heart pounded violently. She thought that she was really able to summon a spirit. However, when she realized that this was not her strength, she was very disappointed, and who else but Eden should know this feeling? Dorothea demands that the guy confess where he got such power, because she is sure that it was not she who summoned the spirit. After a moment's silence, Eden puts his hand in his pocket and pulls out a summoning crystal. Kneeling in front of the princess, he hands her the crystal with a request to use it. He admits that he could not give her the stone then, before the execution, and therefore he is doing it now. The girl is surprised, because it turns out that Eden has also returned to the past, like her. But he corrects her, because to be more precise, it was he who asked to return time for both of them. Eden decides to tell her the whole truth about what really happened, starting when he was small and weak, even before his return. Jonathan mocked him and treated him with contempt, and Eden couldn't help it. But soon he got a great chance. It was the day he and his brother went hunting, and Jonathan said he didn't want to be paired with Eden and wouldn't give him a horse. Perhaps if he had given up his horse to his brother then everything could have been different, but the horse under him reared up. And the next moment, Jonathan was hanging on a cliff, furiously ordering Eden to pull him out. Eden knew that he couldn't pull his brother out alone, and they could fall together. The rope was not long enough to tie it to a tree, and Jonathan, instead of asking for help, only continued to swear. Looking at his brother, Eden turned and left, promising to call someone for help. When help arrived, it turned out that Jonathan had already fallen off a cliff and crashed, and from that moment on, Eden became the only heir to Bronte. From that time on, the guy did not leave the feeling that the whole world belonged to him, because he saw how people who once despised him suddenly began to suck up to him. It was then that he began his tricks with throwing a handkerchief and watched as stupid girls rushed to pick it up. It was in this occupation that Adana found Dorothea one day, who was amused by what he was doing. Then the guy realized for the first time that someone understood his cruel jokes and that he and the girl were alike. Not knowing that it was the princess, he introduced himself to her and asked her to tell him her name. He was very surprised when he learned that the princess herself was standing before him, but he was even more surprised when she offered him a job in her palace. He agreed, because Eden saw the hidden abilities of the princess that others did not see. He believed that her inability to summon spirits lay in her perfection. Eden was sure that their meeting was arranged by fate itself, and he was ready to do anything for the sake of the one he loved. He did not care how to achieve what he wanted, he was ready to sacrifice people if necessary. Eden learned that Theon had tricked himself into being the princess's fiancé, and was ready to kill him. Somehow he learned that Theon was not doing it out of love, but simply to be closer to Raymond, or rather to the spirit of light. Theon did not understand how Eden knew all this, but he understood it himself. After all these years, a boy with red eyes was born in the freed family, and there was a high probability that the spirit of darkness had awakened with him. Since it is impossible to be in the palace, even if you are from Raymond's inner circle, the best way to stay there is to marry the princess. However, Eden already knew that Dorothea would soon kill her brother and seize the throne. Theon realized that the Chancellor was not killing him, as Theon would also face the end after Raymond's death. Eden was sure that Dorothea's husband would not tell her anything, because then he would have to admit that he married her for personal gain. Eden left the room, and Theon wondered how it could have turned out this way. After all, he actually tried to tell Dorothea the truth several times, but seeing her love, he could not do it. Some time passed from that day, and rumors began to spread that Dorothea's army had defeated the troops of Emperor Ray. This event began to be called the Princess Rebellion, and they demanded that she prove her right to the throne by summoning the Spirit of Light. However, after Raymond's death, Dorothea's insomnia worsened. She looked very exhausted. Eden did not know how to help the girl, but he continued to assure her that he was suitable for the role of Empress. Therefore, having gathered his knights, Eden sent them in search of the Stone of Light, which was called the source of the spirit power. Shortly before that, Julia went in search of the stone to help her beloved Theon. Knowing this, the knights searched everywhere for the girl to take the stone from her. Hearing at the market that she was wanted, Julia hurriedly went to the place where she had arranged to meet a friend who was supposed to take the girl to Theon. However, Eden was already waiting for her there, a sharpened dagger at the ready. He knew about the agreed place of the meeting because Julia had written about it to Theon, and the Chancellor had intercepted all their letters on Dorothea's initiative. It was just when Eden was about to present her with the crystal that he witnessed the scene between the princess and her husband. Seeing Dorothea's love for Theon, Eden decided not to give her the crystal. After all, in this way he would prolong the life of his rival, and this was not in his interests. He only consoled the upset girl again, promising her that someday everything would definitely be in her hands. Eden understood that Dorothea needed love, and he could give it to the princess, but the girl was only interested in Theon. After a while, the garden that Dorothea had planted for Theon rotted away completely, and nothing ever bloomed again. Eden was angry that even though his death was approaching, Theon still left a sense of guilt in the princess's heart. Theon realized that it was Eden who killed Julia, and so decided not to reveal his secret to the princess so that Eden would continue to suffer. It wasn't long before Theon Freed committed suicide in the princess's room. And then Eden realized that this was the most perfect revenge Theon was capable of. Less than a few months after Theon's death, Dorothea's courtiers decided to found a new state. They were indignant that the Empress was always lying exhausted in her bed while the Empire was in decline. The courtiers feared that the Empire could be attacked at any time because Ubera was in a very unstable situation. The people were constantly rebelling, and famine and plague were raging in the Empire itself, and the responsibility for all this was placed on the Empress. The courtiers declared to Eden their intention to overthrow the tyrant and install a new ruler in her place, in whom they saw the Chancellor. In response, the Chancellor himself said that he did not recognize any other ruler except Dorothea Milaneo. Eden constantly sat by the bed of the Empress, who did not stop suffering for her deceased husband. After a while, Dorothea still got out of bed, but it turned out to be impossible to calm the angry people. People demanded her execution. Eden begged the girl to make him her husband, and then he would do everything possible to stop the angry people. In response, Dorothea allowed him to do whatever he wanted, but she could not marry him. And when the rebels broke into the castle to seize the Empress, Eden could do nothing to help her. With pain in his heart, he ascended to the place of execution to the noisy shouts of the crowd, who wanted to make him the new emperor. Sitting down next to her, he did not lose hope that she would still beg people for mercy, but Dorothea refused to live without Theon. She admitted that she had been a villain and had failed, and wished Eden to rise to prominence as the new ruler. Then the Chancellor decided to try to help her one last time and handed the girl a crystal of the Spirit of Light. But the Empress refused the privilege offered to her, and Eden watched with tears in his eyes as her head was cut off. Unable to endure the sight any longer, he ran away, and ran without looking ahead, as if his heart were about to break. After all, when Eden saw Dorothea's death, he felt for himself what the girl experienced when she saw the death of her beloved. Now he realized that he should have given her the crystal back then and just watched her happiness next to her husband. Perhaps if he had not wanted more then, his beloved would have survived. And in the end, he had to regret his choice. As Eden sobbed on the shore of the lake, the crystal suddenly lit up with a bright light, and he realized that he was being given a helping hand. Before Eden, Rooks, the queen of the spirits of light, appeared, who learned that all Milaneo were now dead. She offered the guy to conclude a new contract with her, the blood contract. Hearing this suggestion, Eden was angry because Rooks could have appeared to Dorothea Milaneo, but she did not do so. The queen explained that Milaneo's blood was no longer pure because Dorothea was the first who did not know how to summon spirits. Rooks continued to insist on making a contract with her and promised to reward the spirit summoner with the power of the light. But Eden saw no point in even the sun shining, for his sun and Dorothea had already set, and he only wanted to be able to see her again. So he promised Rooks to make a contract with her if the queen revived Dorothea. But Rooks could not do this because by bringing the girl back to life, she would interfere with the power of Quais, the king of the spirit of darkness. In addition, the resurrection of the dead could have a bad effect on time, both universal and Eden's time personally. However, it didn't matter to the guy. He was ready to endure all his childhood torments again, if only to revive Dorothy. Then the queen nevertheless agreed to conclude a new contract with Eden on the condition that he return to his dark past again. And so, when he opened his eyes, he realized that the truth was back in time, to the place where he had grown up. And that meant only one thing, that the princess was alive again. Eden then decided that it was better for him not to date the princess in this life, and was even glad that he could not enter the academy because of that incident on the road. It was when he finally decided that he would not wish for more in this life just to make the princess happy, that he accidentally met her on the beach. Everything turned out differently, and their fates were still intertwined, even in this life. After finishing his story, Eden admits that he hoped that Dorothea would not remember anything about her past life. The girl realized that it was thanks to him that she had a chance to start her life anew, and she believed that all words were only for the sake of wanting to have power. Her eyes filled with tears because now she saw the guy from a completely different side. Wiping away Dorothea's tears and kneeling before her, Eden hands her the Spirit Stone, for she has always been and will always be the only empress for him. He wants her to rise to the highest place and shine brightly, not out of greed, but only out of love. Eden snuggles up to the girl and confesses his feelings to the girl, and everything around them is illuminated by the bright glow of the spirit of light. Dorothea is grateful to the guy for everything he has done for her, but she does not want to accept the crystal from him, because she considers herself unworthy after everything she has done in the past. At the moment when they are arguing about whether the princess deserves to become empress, she is summoned by her father. The emperor is angry that the girl hid the fact that she knows how to summon the spirit of light. The princess insists that she does not know how to do this, and she herself does not know how it all happened during the dance. Karnan orders her to demonstrate her abilities anyway, and Dorothy notices that his gaze has changed. Previously, he had always looked at the girl with contempt, but because Karnan now thought that his daughter had power, she felt interested in herself. Dorothea admits that she cannot summon the spirit of light, but the emperor, with a change in face, orders her to prove her worth. The girl does not understand why it is so important for him whether she has strength of spirit, because there is Prince Raymond, and her strength can only become a hindrance for him. However, Karnan needs it at least to no longer hear the words that Milaneo will come to an end. Since Dorothea is the same child that Ellis gave birth to at the cost of her life, she does not dare to end the entire family, and must prove that the Empress's sacrifice was not in vain. Turning to the window, Karnan orders his daughter to learn from Raymond how to handle spirits, but not to take up much of his time. The Emperor is sure that if Dorothea begins to possess this gift, the talk that the imperial family is fading away will subside. Sitting in the garden after talking to her father, Dorothy twists his words in her head that now she will have to perform duties as befits a member of the Milaneo family. Looking at the crystal in her hands, she remembers that Eden is a contract soldier, so she will be able to summon a spirit with a stone as long as it is nearby. He promised that he would always be there so that she could call upon the light at any time. While thinking about it, the girl is caught by Raymond, who happily runs to his sister to congratulate her on her abilities. Lenascor's palace was one of many that Ellis had used. It had been empty since her death, but now Dorothea would live there by Carnon's decree. Ray is amazed by his sister's incredible strength. He is in awe of the way people looked at her as she summoned her fortitude. Dorothy confesses to her brother that she didn't want to use this power, but her brother knows it himself because he noticed her surprise. Raymond asks his sister not to be so serious because she just gained the power to control the spirits, and that's it. There is no need to fill your head with unnecessary things. Eden approaches them, and the princess apologizes to her brother to talk to the guy in private. Stepping aside, she hands Eden the crystal and asks him to take it back. She admits that she does not want to become empress, and he is very surprised. After all, Eden thought that all Dorothea wanted was to become an empress and live happily together with the people she loved. But the girl does not want the past to repeat itself and is not going to allow the slightest chance for this. Eden continues to insist that with this crystal, Dorothea will be able to repay all the contempt she has endured, and everyone will see her as an heir worthy of the throne. The princess apologizes to the guy. She believes that she lacks a lot because even he, not being Milaneo, can control the spirits. Eden hoped that she would be happy to receive this power. After all, he really didn't want to make any more mistakes. The guy wanted to give her the crystal many times, but if she needed it and Eden wasn't around, the girl might have problems. That was why he had been waiting for the opportunity to make his debut in society in order to be in Lampas all the time, and it turned out that it was all in vain. Taking the princess by the hand, Eden offers to take her back to the hall, where everyone is already waiting for them to feast, and Poe must serve the cake. Raymond is very concerned about Theon's condition, but a friend assures him that he is fine now. He realized that the power outage during Dorothy's debut was because of him. Theon apologizes to the prince for not being able to hold out until he arrives. It's just that his condition was so bad that for a moment he couldn't control the spirit of darkness. Raymond also apologizes for not coming earlier to be with his friend, but thanks to the spirit of the princess, everything is resolved. Raymond happily informs his friends that Dorothea will soon move to another palace. Julia is concerned that the princess has such a powerful power because now she can claim the throne. Raymond knows that Dorothy has always reacted sharply to talk about the throne, but she thinks there is nothing to worry about. The prince had always considered his sister to be very intelligent, so he wouldn't be surprised if she became empress. Julia doesn't understand how he can talk about it so calmly because Raymond could lose the throne. The prince replies with a smile that even if he doesn't know what Dorothy wants, he knows himself perfectly. Entering the hall arm in arm with Eden, the princess notices that the audience has changed a lot. The glances of the people directed at her did not express curiosity and interest, but strong tension. Dorothea realizes what they think about her becoming the next empress. Nereus approaches them, applauding that the princess could summon spirits all along, but hid it. The girl insists that it happened by accident, but Nereus does not believe that the blackout and her glow was a coincidence. People gathered around ask Dorothea to repeat her dance and compliment her. The girl feels for herself how the enemy, who only pointed a knife at you, can suddenly turn out to be on your side, and a friend, who seemed to be always there, suddenly betrays. Nereus raises a toast in honor of the princess, and those gathered around congratulate her. Raising her glass, Dorothea thanks everyone for their congratulations and asks them to drink and be merry as they have despised her all this time. After emptying her glass to the bottom, she smiles and states that it was a joke, so she asks everyone to relax and have fun, not forgetting that the princess wanted to taste the cake and leave the hall immediately afterward. Eden brought her a slice. The girl is touched by how attentive he is to everything she says and to all her desires. Stefan accidentally overhears the other knights talking about how lucky he is to serve the princess because with the increase in her status, he will also be promoted. The knight sees no point in even answering them. He is very glad that Dorothea has finally been recognized by everyone around him. Sitting in the carriage with Eden, the princess remembers how in a past life he performed his tricks with handkerchiefs. Today, she remembered this moment when she said a toast, because then she realized that she had not changed after all. The girl wants to know why Eden hid Theon's secret, because now everything could be different. She does not understand why he decided to confess now, because he could never reveal the whole truth. Taking the girl's hand, Eden admits that he could not bear to bear the weight of sin for the death of the prince and Theon. Even though the princess thinks she hasn't changed, Eden doesn't think so. He offers her to use her power to be close to Theon and live happily with him, because this is why Eden returned. Even if he was destined to love her for the rest of his life, he would always be there for her sake so that she could use his power. When he reaches the castle, Eden asks to be allowed to accompany her one last time and holds out his hand to the princess. At the threshold of the house, the girl is met by her beloved people, Stefan, Clara, Joe, and Poe. Taking Eden's hand, Dorothea hopes that this day will not leave him with bad memories. Approaching her loved ones, the princess wishes the guy a good road and asks him to be careful. The girl enters the castle, and everyone greets her happily and congratulates her on her debut with applause. Poe presents her with a cake that was made especially in honor of the princess. Everyone congratulates her in the same way as people did in the palace, but now she is calm in her heart, and she does not want to lose these valuable emotions. She understands that she will be much happier if she stays with the people dear to her and does not become an empress, and this is enough for her. After the feast, Dorothea lies down on the bed and finds a crystal of the Spirit of Light in her pocket. She goes out onto the balcony and finds herself thinking only of Eden, even though this stone could help her be with Theon. Taking a bath after a hard day, Eden thinks about how things turned out. When he first returned, he thought that the princess did not remember anything about the past, and he believed that he would have a chance someday. When he saw Fried's handkerchief in her bedroom, he realized that he would not have a chance in this life either. Eden always tried to be near Dorothea, but the girl's gaze was always turned to Theon. In fact, he did not want to give up the stone. He thought that if he received it, Dorothy would leave it forever. In the end, he gave her the crystal and did everything in his power, but now it was over. Eden's father and stepmother knock on his door, and he dresses and opens the door for them. They wonder how the princess's debut ball went, and it is noticeable that the Brontes are glad that their son was Dorothea's partner. Eden tells his parents that he is tired and apologizes, but when he turns to go to bed, he suddenly hears his brother's voice behind him. Jonathan stands in his bedroom and looks at Eden with an evil look, who asks him to come out. Jonathan is sure that his brother is behaving so impudently because he is hiding behind the princess's skirt. Eden continues to insist that he is tired and asks to be left alone, but Jonathan pushes him. He shouts that Eden's life will not change if he went to a ball with the princess once, because he is only an illegitimate son. Bending over him, Eden says that unlike him, Jonathan has nothing but a bloodline, so he must protect this and be able to understand people well. The guy orders his brother to watch his words from now on and kicks him out of his room. Sitting down on his bed, a tired Eden thinks about what to do now because he has achieved his goal and he has nothing more to strive for. Suddenly, seeing the radiance of the Spirit of Light around him, he clearly feels that the princess is summoning spirits. He thinks she's showing off her abilities in the palace, but in reality, she's just standing on the balcony thinking about him. With his hands pressed to his chest, Eden hopes that the girl feels him as well as he feels her. After some time, the Duke of Bronte and his wife arrived at the Emperor's palace to introduce his son to him. Jonathan greets the Emperor and reveals that he recently graduated from the academy. Eden also entered the drawing room, introducing himself to the Emperor as the youngest son of the Bronte family. Karnan notices that the guy has not only an outstanding appearance, in all his movements, you can feel the level of education, and he is completely different from his older brother. The Emperor remembers that Eden was Dorothea's partner at the ball, and asks how long they have known each other. Upon learning that the princess and Eden met in Cerithiana, Karnan asks if she invoked the power of the spirit there. To protect the princess from trouble, Eden replies that the first time he saw Dorothy summon spirits was at a ball. Karnan watches the guy, who doesn't feel a drop of excitement or fear, thinking that you need to be careful with him. The Duke, not missing the chance, decides to tell how the princess was friends with Eden in Cerishian and spent a lot of time with him. Jonathan is angry that everyone is talking only about his brother again, because they have come here to introduce him to the Emperor. Noticing her son's displeasure, the Duchess begins to praise Karnona Jonathan. After bowing, the guy informs the Emperor of his desire to serve him and gain experience as the future head of the Bronte family. However, Karnan turns around, stating that Lampas is not the place to raise future family heads. His parents are impressed by the way Eden has behaved in front of the Emperor, and he thanks them for their good upbringing. Looking at his brother, Eden feels sorry for him, because he could boast of the end of the epistemia, but only put himself in an awkward position. He pats Jonathan on the shoulder to thank him for bringing him to Lampas, but the boy pushes Eden's hand away. Their parents ask them not to quarrel, and Eden understands that they are waiting for him to marry Dorothea and help Jonathan take his place in society. However, Eden considers these expectations too high because all this is not part of his plans. At the moment when Eden is thinking about how much he would like Dorothea again, suddenly she appears in the room. He is very surprised since the princess expressed a desire to talk to the guy in private. After seeing the Duke and his wife off and wishing them a good journey, the girl asks Eden to follow her to a private room. Passing by the courtiers, Eden hears admiration for him and catches himself that he used to like such interest, and now it only embarrasses it. While they were walking, the princess never once turned in his direction, and therefore it seems to the guy that she thereby rejects him. Sitting down on the couch, Dorothea invites Eden to sit across from him, and he is nervous, not understanding what she wants to talk about. The girl admits that all this time it seemed to her that this second life was given to her as a punishment, since she was a tyrant. Therefore, she was always tormented by the fact that only she remembered everything that happened in the past, and she did not have a chance to atone for her guilt. As soon as she felt happy, she convinced herself that she could not be happy, because she had made so many people unhappy. Hearing this, Eden realizes that all the love and sacrifices he has dedicated to her were only suffering for her. And in fact, he did not even suspect what she really wanted and what she was striving for. However, Dorothea suddenly admits that she has now changed her mind, and this life was a new chance that Eden gave her. The guy is surprised to hear that the princess, without naming names, told her story to her brother. As it turned out, after a little thought, Raymond suggested that a person who gave another a chance at a new life should also be given a second chance. Getting up from the couch, the girl admits that now she realized that thanks to Eden, she found out what her brother was thinking and saved Theon. It was also thanks to him that she met Stefan, Clara, Joe, and Poe, and she had a chance to protect these people she loved. The princess hugs Eden to her, begs for forgiveness, and thanks him for giving her all this. The guy burying his nose in the princess's shoulder, Eden hugs her tightly and hugs her. Suddenly, he is embarrassed because he burst into tears in front of Dorothea, and the girl sees him so sincere and even sweet for the first time. He admits that her gaze embarrasses him, but Dorothy looks at him and thinks about how she used to see him differently. At that time, he was a man without flaws, handsome but dangerous, and therefore so attractive. At the same time, he regrets life, makes sacrifices for it, and cries for it. And the girl does not understand how one person can be so different. Leaning next to him on the couch and approaching his face, Dorothy asks if he likes her. He confesses, and the girl's cheeks flush because she still cannot believe that someone can like her. Eden takes Dorothea's hand, puts it to his chest in which his heart beats wildly, and confesses that no matter how much he promised himself not to love her, when she loved another, he could not do it. He strokes the face of a girl who still can't believe that she can be loved so much. Eden has heard that Dorothy has refused to become empress and is interested in her plans for life. She admits that she just plans to live quietly, because in her past life everyone had a hard time because of her, and now she needs to live properly. Eden is happy for her decision, because this is exactly what Dorothea really wants, and therefore she needs to do just that. Suddenly remembering something, Eden reaches into his pocket and takes out a locket, handing it to the princess. The guy noticed that the crystal was inconvenient to carry around just like that and ordered this medallion into which you can insert a stone. Eden puts the locket around her neck, and Dorothea thinks her heart is about to jump out of her chest. The guy recalls how as a child she refused to accept an expensive gift from him because then they were not close enough. Eden wishes the princess a good day and leaves, and Stefan and Clara enter the room, unable to hide her delight at the gift. Dorothea is surprised by the servant's confession that she has long noticed that Eden likes the princess. Clara says that it always seemed to her that the boy since childhood had the eyes of an adult man who had already experienced the pain of love. The maid strongly advises her mistress to act only at the behest of her heart and not to listen to anyone else. Raymond comes to his father, who has been waiting for him in his office for a long time. Karnan is very angry with his son because he is late, and the emperor asked him to bring a plan to increase wheat production in the Barahan region. Standing in front of the emperor, Raymond says that he is thinking of changing the wheat variety to increase production by 5 tons. But Karnan is not happy with his idea because, given the population of Barajan, there is not much land for wheat production. He doesn't like any of Raymond's ideas and wants his son to do whatever it takes if he's going to run the empire from now on. After meeting with Karnan, the prince has another appointment and he is upset because it seemed to him that after graduating from the academy, he would be able to breathe freely. However, he has already officially entered state affairs, so now nobles from all provinces line up to meet him. Raymond finds it hard to realize that he can't even manage agriculture, something he thought he was good at. He thinks with regret that it has been a week since he was last in his garden. Meeting her brother, the princess notices that he looks very tired. Raymond is very moved that Dorothy has noticed this, but she insists that she is only worried that his fatigue may affect the affairs of state. Eden doesn't understand why Dorothea doesn't use the soul stone yet. Every day he sat and waited, but after that day the princess never used the stone. The guy does not understand what kind of relationship he has with the princess now, and whether he should go to her himself or wait for her to arrive. Eden also doesn't know if he should smile amiably and talk to her, or if Dorothy wants him to keep his distance. The main thing he didn't understand was whether his love had any chance left. However, in any case, he wants to go along the same road with her, and therefore he should live honestly in the future. Standing at the window, Eden notices that people have gathered downstairs who want to meet him, and he goes down to them. As it turned out, there were servants of various girls standing below, who had sent Eden gifts from themselves. The guy thanks them for the gifts, since it is impolite to refuse, but asks not to do it again. Suddenly, a red-haired girl gets out of the carriage and heads straight for Eden. The guy recognizes her as Monica Afanita, and she hands him a letter asking him to read it. Monica was engaged to Nereus Hark, and at the moment she was supposed to discuss the main details of the wedding. There was no reason in Monica's family to reject her marriage to Prince Hark, and so everything was preordained. Before Eden returned, he was very amused when she showed her attention to him. Through his interactions with her, he was able to obtain information about Hark, and he liked that she herself made fun of Nereus. In order to gain Eden's trust, she was ready to reveal her secrets and admitted that she did not want to marry Hark. Realizing that the girl was about to confess her love to him, Eden asked him not to say something for which she could not answer. The guy was sure that Monica wanted to break up the engagement, and therefore used him. However, the only engagement partner comparable in level to Prince Hark could only be considered Raymond and Theon. Eden announced that he did not want to be in the center of a scandal in this way, and the girl turned away and left. However, after some time, Monica and Nereus broke off the engagement, and the groom blamed Eden for their breakup. When Nereus ascended the throne, he attacked the empire of Uber, and it is possible that the break in the engagement was just a pretext for the attack. And now this woman stands in front of him and hands him a letter that Eden promises to read. In the letter, Monica invites Eden to lunch at Caro's restaurant the following week, as she needs to talk to him about something. The guy did not like the insistent tone of the letter, and he was once again convinced that the girl, as before, had neither tact nor manners. Eden tears up the letter, because it was because of this that Monica and Nereus broke up in a past life, and the war began. Dorothea does not understand why Raymond always comes to rest in her room. Looking kindly at his sister and smiling at her, the prince admits that he rests when he looks at her face. The prince remembers how Dorothy used to be angry with him when he did not behave in a way befitting an heir to the throne, and he was offended by this. It's just that then Dorothea believed that he had to be perfect to become emperor, but now she understands that strong authority does not always help. Now she wants Ray to let go of his authority with her and just relax, because the prince needs to take a breath sometimes. Raymond complains to his sister that he still has a lot of things to do, and the emperor wants him to help him with increasing wheat production. However, no matter how much the prince thinks, nothing gets into his head, because the land there is bad, and even the 3-field will not help. After thinking for a while, Dorothea tells her brother that she once heard how in one country they coped with such a task. They alternated the cultivation of crops that need different levels of land fertility, and thereby increase the harvest. The girl advises the prince to follow this example, and he is very glad, not understanding why he did not think of it himself. Raymond thanks his sister for her advice and for helping him conserve his strength. The prince is once again convinced that Dorothy would be a better fit for the role of Empress, but she does not like it when he talks about it. The girl confesses to her brother that she is thinking of taking up fencing again and asks him to help her with this. Stefan comes to the captain of the Shining Knights, Arthur, who called him to his place. The captain praises Stefan for doing a good job protecting the princess all this time and considers appointing him as his deputy. However, this means that the knight must leave Dorothea's personal guard and work in the name of honor from now on. Studying in the garden, Stefan considers the captain's offer because they want to promote him even without an exam. But the guy does not understand what is the point of being a knight if he cannot achieve a promotion on his own. Suddenly, Dorothy attacks Stefan from behind, but the guy quickly orients himself and knocks the sword out of her hands. Despite the slight pain caused, she admits that he is the most amazing knight, and she did not have a chance to stab him. Noticing that Stefan has been training since the morning, Dorothea realizes that something is bothering him and asks him about it. She heard that they want to appoint him deputy head of the order, and she does not understand why he is sad, because this is good news. The princess assures Stefan that he deserves to take this place without her, and she advises him to take this chance. The girl asks to trust her words and move forward because she values him very much and wants him to be fine. Stefan thinks about the fact that 10 years ago the princess was very young and did not even reach his waist. Now she was standing on her feet and talking to him, and there was no longer the weak princess who was about to fall. He used to look at her as a child who is taking her first steps, but she has become an adult, and he has only now realized this. Dorothea was already moving forward, and he was still marking time. Realizing all this, Stefan kneels in front of her as a sign of gratitude. After a while, the initiation ceremony took place, to which, of course, the princess appeared. The girl is still unpleasant to be among aristocrats, but she tries to smile and politely respond to everyone. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls to Dorothea, and when she turns around, she sees Theon, who was looking for her at the request of the prince. Stretching out his hand to the princess, the guy offers to accompany her to her brother. Taking Theon's arm, Dorothea goes to Raymond, thinking that now that she knows everything about the guy, he seems different to her. Before, when she was only focused on her emotions, she hadn't noticed his powers. The princess does not understand how she could love Theon, not really knowing anything about him. After walking a little further, Dorothy realizes that Raymond wasn't really looking for her and asks why Theon tricked her. Embarrassed, the guy apologizes for using the prince as an excuse, because it seemed to him that she was uncomfortable among those people. Dorothea catches herself thinking that now, for some reason, she is no longer happy that Theon takes care of her. Suddenly, the guy asks her to have dinner with her this week because he needs to tell her something important. Bending over the girl, he admits that for this conversation, he needs to be alone with her. He explains that on the day of her debut, he had urgent things to do, and so he couldn't congratulate her properly. Dorothy realizes that Theon was sick that day because of the spirit of darkness, and that is why the lights in the hall went out. After Eden gave the summoning stone to the princess, the girl began to study materials related to the topic of spirits. She had learned that any power is prone to surge if there is too much of it, and the forces of light and darkness cancel each other out. Then Dorothea realized that Theon had married her for this very reason, unable to deal with the force of darkness alone. Sometimes he did it through Raymond, so Dorothy hated her brother. She felt that he was taking her husband away from her. Thinking that Theon plans to tell her about the power of darkness at the meeting, the princess agrees to meet him at a restaurant. Clara runs in and informs Dorothea of the beginning of the ceremony and carries with her a bundle that the princess asked her to find. Running up to Stefan, the girl is glad that she is not late and hands the knight a package. Unfolding it, Stefan is surprised to find the Sturkalyp's sword. In her past life, Dorothea had liked to collect famous swords, and this was one of them. Stefan gratefully accepts the gift because this is the first sword that the princess gave to her knight. Suddenly, Stefan takes out of his pocket a brooch that Dorothy once gave him and hands it to the princess. The girl thinks that he is returning the brooch to her, but the next moment he points to his breasts and thereby asks to attach it to the jacket. Clara, who runs up to them, hurries to correct Stefan's form and talks about how amazing he looks. Taking the girl by the hand,